Welcome to Technology Brothers, the most profitable podcast in the world.
Hi there, this is Ben, Vice President at Technology Brothers, with a quick announcement. While filming today, we unfortunately had a small technical error that led to the first 19 minutes of this episode having poor audio quality. I speak on behalf of the organization, John, Jordy, and myself when I say that this will not happen again. We have already found the intern that was responsible, and they will be terminated. Thank you for your understanding, and back to the show.
I'm here with Jordy Hayes, and today we are talking about my ramp card. I got a new ramp card, and my last one was plastic, but they sent me the metal one.
You know why they sent it?
Why?
Microplastic avoidance, right? One of the biggest issues with a lot of these fintechs is they're sending millions and millions and millions of plastic cards out into the ether, right? And every day technology workers are having to use them oftentimes multiple times, certainly multiple times a week, sometimes multiple times a day. And the amount of microplastic exposure from the average, plastic credit card is really, we think it could be contributing to the testosterone epidemic.
I think so too, yeah. Everyone always thought that, you get a black card from Amex, it's metal, it's titanium, it's so cool, like it's a flex. It's never about flexing.
Out of status.
It wasn't about flexing. It was about avoiding plastic.
Exactly. Comes down to health. Health is the ultimate status symbol.
It is, yeah.
So if your body is highly estrogenic and from all the plastic cards that you're handling, that's an easy thing to cut out. And thank you to Ramp.
I mean, I was thinking that most of my credit cards have actually moved over to metal now, but my ID hasn't. And why is the government poisoning me?
It's a big issue.
But back on the topic of Ramp and the government, we need to take a little victory lap because. What was it, last week you made, threw something out there. Maybe it was a little bit of a joke, maybe it was half serious, but we got some real traction on your idea. So break down the original thought of Ramp for the government and then tell me kind of what the downstream effects have been.
Yeah, look, the government spends more money, the U.S. federal government spends more money than anybody in the world, right? And,
that's true, yeah.
And they have more revenue than I think any other organization in the world. Yeah. I'm sure somebody will point out that I'm incorrect on that, but
look, trillions. Yeah.
But look, anytime you have a lot of spend, you're going to have a lot of waste and spend. Right now it seems very obvious that the U.S. government doesn't have a good handle on their spending, just in general. Yep. And there's a lot of ways to fix that. You can get new leadership in that wants to sort of drill down budget by budget and kind of start to understand how money's being spent. But another way to kind of attack that problem is through software. So tech-enabled financial services. We went through an era where Amex and a lot of the big corporate card players just wanted you to spend as much money as humanly possible because the more money you spend, the more money they make. Ramp, came out, I think only around 4 or 5 years ago at this point, and decided, hey, we're going to flip this on its head. How do we help companies save money? If our companies can save money, they'll become better businesses, and through that, they'll become better customers. Yep. So aligning that sort of incentive structure with the company has proved to be very fruitful. And I think there's a strong case to be made that the federal government needs to get on Ramp, not just at the federal level, needs to be mandated, state level, county level, city level, all the way down to your kid's club soccer team should be on Ramp. But we can start and really set an example at the federal government level. And the campaign has kind of exposed some of the issues with how politicians like to spend money, right? It became apparent over the weekend that the Kamala campaign had been using Ramp, but
and you would expect them to win if they were on Ramp.
Yeah, you would expect them to win, but here's the issue. So they blew through about $1 billion in a few months, almost unprecedented. I think like $500,000 of that went to payroll. Yeah. But the big issue, they were on Ramp, but they were also using a variety of other sort of payment
mistake number
platforms.
one.
And so because that spend wasn't consolidated, how could they really get a grasp on their spending, right? Yeah. They're not able to fully unlock the potential of Ramp's platform if they're just letting them.
Yeah, I mean, what's crazy is when you sign up for Ramp, you get this SDR, something to help onboard you, and one of the things that they're working towards when they're telling you about the features is getting you to migrate 100% of your spend. Yep. And if you think about it, that Ramp SDR could have changed history. If he had,
totally,
he or she.
A lot of people like to credit
100%.
David Sachs and All In with Trump's victory, but I think there's a good argument to say that.
Yeah, well, I was thinking about how like this year the whole narrative is like, oh, it's the podcast election. And I think in 2028, like we could seriously see like it's the corporate card election, where one campaign comes out and says, "Hey, we're running on ramp," and then the other, when Kamala was on stage, she said, "Well, I have a gun," right?
Yeah.
And so you could hear, "Oh, the other candidate, they're on ramp too." So then we get into the weeds and we start talking about, well, who's using travel, who's using bill pay, and then someone was lying about it, and that's a national.
Who's properly leveraging the AI functionality?
Exactly. Like, what's your close? Which campaign is closing faster?
Yeah.
And this is what the voters care about.
Yeah.
Like the podcast thing,
it's a proxy for
just
operational
efficiency.
excellence.
Exactly, efficiency. And so, I think everyone should pay attention. The podcast story, the whole podcast selection, you can kind of ignore that from now. That's done.
Yep.
The next thing, we're going into the corporate card election.
Yep.
Anyway, let's move into our top story of the week. The information featured my talk.
Incredible publication.
Incredible copy. I love that.
Yeah.
No one loves the information more than
people that really realize that we're witnessing the birth of the TMZ for technology.
Yeah.
Right? And that's like a special moment in time.
Yeah, there's a broader narrative about like new media, but people haven't really done the job of understanding, mapping the new media to what they're replacing.
Yeah.
And in this case, like, it's clearly kind of the next generation TMZ, which is fantastic. It's like,
it was missing.
You can't look away from. Yeah.
Yeah.
So in the they did some election recapping and recapped a whole bunch of events related to politics, which we don't really talk about here, but because they didn't mention me by name, but they mentioned the name of my talk. So I'll read from.
And they wanted to talk to you because you've kind of grown a reputation of being a male podcast expert.
Yes.
Not just because you're one of the hosts of Technology Brothers, but you kind of have a firm grip on the industry.
Yes. Well, actually, the first time the information interviewed me was, do you know Abe Brown? He writes the Weekend thing. Yeah. I put out a tweet which would have made it into the stock if it was posted today because it's a banger. It was, we don't need any more Midas lists. We need an Icarus list for VCs that flew too close to the sun. Some of my best work. And it really resonated. Like Alex Conrad, who makes the Midas list, was like, "This is actually a good idea." And then we started like talking about it. And so I talked to Abe a bunch, and I was like, "Dude, like if someone, I mean, if like Forbes said like, hey, we're doing the Icarus list this year of like the worst VCs, like you would have an army of like 500 Stanford new grad analysts working day and night just to keep the firm off of that list.
Yeah.
Like people try to get on the Midas list. Some people don't really care about it, but most people fight to get on.
For the crisis PR industry, it would be the biggest event.
It would be the largest wealth transfer in history from GPs to crisis PR firms.
Yeah. I don't think that's past their expense for that.
Yeah, no. But yeah, love the information. No one loves the information more than I do. But they were recapping some of the political news, and they said last week the most far out faction of tech's burgeoning right wing gathered in Miami Beach for Hereticon, Founders Fund's celebration of radical free thinking. Between talks like The Trad Wife Returns and The Economics of Doom, that one was mine. Teal roamed the crowds, accepting preemptive congratulations for the coming election, according to several people who attended. And I don't know about that last part. Like, I feel like people were not.
Let's see the sources.
Yeah, I don't know.
It really wasn't about politics.
Yeah, it wasn't, and also there were tons of left wingers there. That's like the whole point. And there were a lot of fights about that, and that's the part of the debate club and all that.
Yeah, the most heretical people at Hereticon are all the left-leaning attendees who were trying to jam their politics down the rest of the attendees' throats. And it was very triggering, not because of their viewpoint, but because it was not meant to be a place to sort of discuss politics about policy, right?
Yeah,
it was about the economy,
right?
It was about how do we kind of increase global prosperity through non-traditional.
I do love that, my talk, The Economics of Doom, which was great. I interviewed Tyler Cowen. I love him. It was a lot of fun. But we are two of the more normie people there, I think, in the sense that, like, we're talking about economics. He wasn't particularly doom-pilled.
He's a professor. You're a male podcast expert.
I'm a businessman, first and foremost. Yeah. So, you know, I'm not one of these, like, crazy biohackers who's growing, you know, new organ. Exactly. I'm not doing any of the crazy stuff that I did see there. But I love that I made it, and I have no idea why they chose this one. I think it's mostly because when the Pirate Wires team did the write-up, they talked about like six different like
our talk was too, the one we did on PEDs in the Valley was too heretical. It just couldn't really be published anywhere.
Yeah, I got to figure out how to get them to issue a correction. Say it was the Economics of Doom, hosted by John Coogan, the host of Technology Brothers, and then linked to us.
Yeah.
Did I tell you I did that? I changed the SEO once. Somebody wrote an article about me being like a toxic male podcaster, something like that. It was like some sort of hit piece, and when they linked to me, they linked to johncoogan.com/about, just to be like, this is his like about page, right?
Yeah.
And I wanted the SEO to go to Lucy so he could sell more product. So I rerouted the link.
No way.
Yeah,
That's great.
Yeah,
That's
yeah.
great.
And so now we have an extra backlink.
You would think that journalists would be onto that, like don't route to a domain that they
control. Exactly.
Right?
Yeah. So a little tip out there for the listeners.
I don't think we have a lot of journalists that listen to
no,
podcasts
but get. I mean, I do have a thesis that a lie can get halfway across the world before the truth can put its shoes on. Have you heard this phrase? Or if it bleeds, it leads.
Yeah.
And I think that if you're a startup and you want attention, you want press, you should be courting hit pieces.
Yeah.
And I think that there's actually an opportunity. Like
nobody's done that better than Dryden.
That's true.
Yeah.
I mean, phenomenal comeback story. Yeah, you're right.
He's used it to his advantage.
Yeah, no, it tells like this heroic journey.
Yeah.
Lulu's obviously the master at getting good press. Yeah. But maybe we need a Lulu for getting negative press.
Yeah. Yeah.
Just go and make me like hated by 90% of America, and I will monetize the 10% that loves me for countercultural reasons.
Yeah.
I think that's interesting. So to that effect, I had a great call yesterday with none other than Taylor Lorenz.
No way.
Yeah, and she's writing a piece for The Information.
She's writing
news.
She's writing for The Information.
She's writing for The Information now. We're so back.
We're at a
can't tell you how
time where there's this massive power struggle between The Information, Newcomer, Bloomberg, Forbes for top technology talent. Yep. So it's an amazing cosign for The Information that they're able to pick up Lorenz at this moment in time.
She's also been on TMZ a bunch.
Yeah.
So think about that crossover.
Yeah.
It's amazing.
I mean, if you needed more proof that The Information is the
TMZ attack,
technology, that's it.
That's it. Yeah. So I don't think she's not working there full time, but she's writing a piece about the bro podcast sphere, the male podcast sphere, which is why she called me to testify as a male podcast expert.
Yeah.
And I wasn't sure if she was calling me because I'm a male who is a podcast expert, or if I'm a male podcast expert. Yeah. But either way, I was totally prepared to comment on the record, and we had a wonderful conversation. And
she's really great to talk to.
She is.
She's got great, she's got ideas.
I mean, I like the critique of the tech elite that I completely agree with, from the Kara Swishers and the Taylor Lorenz, is that too many tech billionaires are humorless, and they can't take a joke, and they get their feathers too ruffled when people come for them.
Yeah.
And you got to know that we are in the WWE era of tech. Exactly. And there's going to be some faces and there's going to be some heels, but you can't shut the game down. You can't have a villainless, conflictless society.
Full circle moment for me, because the first time I ever spoke to the New York Times was through Taylor Lorenz to give my point of view on the Call Her Daddy podcast.
That's right. Wait, so we both talked to her about podcasts.
Yeah.
That's amazing.
So we are top source.
Well, I'm the male podcast expert. I guess you happen to be a female podcast expert.
Yeah,
it's good.
No, I thought you wrote a great piece. This was back in 2020. Really? It was like, I remember exactly where I was walking to Erewhon from my apartment in Venice, and everything, the whole world was shut down. It was just me and Taylor talking about podcasts, which was really an awesome moment.
Yeah. A little Chekhov's gun, a little foretelling of the future.
Totally.
Fantastic. But she wanted to talk about the bro podcast boom, and
it really is a boom.
There is, and so there were some like things that I disagreed with. One is that just like, you know, if the Democrats had run like a stronger candidate, and that stronger candidate had done, I tend to think that right now there's this narrative of like there's this very consolidated, cohesive, massive right-wing list of podcasts that lean right. So it's like you start with Rogan, then you go to Lex.
I would say the big ones, to be clear, are very much center right.
Oh, for sure.
And I don't want
to
be
barely right.
Barely right.
Barely right.
Even Joe Rogan.
And there's tons of clips of Rogan.
Right?
Lifetime Democrat talking about he loves Bernie, all these other things. It's just like in this election, they like the goalposts moved to the point where like a lot of the big podcasts leaned right.
Yeah.
And so you have Rogan, Lex, Chris Williamson, Jesse Michaels with the alien stuff. You have Huberman. Some of those hosted Trump. You have Tim Dillon, Theo Vaughn, the comedians, Kill Tony, Bussin' with the Boys, Aiden Ross. There's like this huge community. And what's interesting is that like if you actually sat all those people down, they probably have a pretty wide spectrum of politics, but they all kind of just align with like general conservatism this time around, and Trump was like the candidate of that. Whereas on the left, I think you actually have just as much reach, but it's more fragmented. So you have Pod Save America, Kamala didn't do it. You have Smartless with Jason Bateman, and that's a pretty like center left podcast, I would call it. Kamala didn't do it. It's more of a comedy show, but that's fine. Like, it doesn't need to be a politics show. You have The Daily, you have the Ezra Klein Show. I was just looking at the top podcasts, and it's not like, Tucker's up there, Rogan's up there, but so is the New York Times and Ezra Klein.
Well, you have a thesis that's clearly turning into a law of Coogan's many laws.
Sure.
Which is that the candidate that just simply records more podcasts.
More hours.
Wins, right?
Yeah, I ran the numbers, and it's like 35 million views just on the Rogan episode. Average view duration on that 3-hour episode was about 45 minutes. I talked to some people that know podcast durations. And so you multiply that out, and it's just billions of minutes or something like that. Or like, it's something like hundreds of millions of minutes.
And so I hope,
and the value of that is easily $600 million. That was it made up for the funding gap. And so it's like if you're a politician, you can either spend $100,000 on an ad that reaches 1 million people, or you can go do a podcast that reaches 1 million people, and instead of getting a 30-second ad, you're getting 45 minutes. It's a 45-minute ad, and people just are obsessed.
Yeah, this is why for all the businessmen out there, if you get an opportunity to go on a podcast, even if it legitimately only has 100 engaged listeners,
do it.
It's worth doing, because that's an hour of time that you get to spend talking to people that are going to totally digest like what you're doing, why it's important, and why they should be into your product or service, whatever it is. And I give the example when I'm talking to founders that ask me, hey, should I go on the show? It's not big, but what do you think? I say, 20 years ago, when a businessman had an opportunity to fly to St. Louis to get in front of 50 potential customers in a room, they would spend their entire day to go and do that.
Yep.
It's worth you getting on a podcast for an hour from Zoom and just having a conversation. We have only 100 people listen to it.
Did you see that email? We got our first request to go on as we got our first request.
Brothers?
Yeah, we got our first request to go on a podcast as the Technology Brothers. Amazing. I think we should do it. I think the guy has like 6 episodes.
Great.
And it's like brand
So
new.
do we. On the come up together.
Let's give it a try.
Yeah.
Like we kind of debated on that. I think on the center left, you have those center left shows, but then you also have the far left shows like Chapo, the Adam Friedland Show, Red Scare formerly, Destiny, and it's like you could see a Democrat candidate like Bernie would go on this stuff. He can get in the ring with like the Chapo guys and hold his own, but he can also hold his own with Ezra Klein. And so I mean, long story short, I think the future of the Democratic Party is more candidates like Bernie, more candidates like AOC, more candidates like Pete Buttigieg, less candidates that are just straight up media trained to stay on topic, blah, 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 blah. But
authenticity wins.
But the interesting thing was that Taylor was really asking this one question again and again, which is like, why do podcasts lean right wing? And I was kind of rejecting the premise for a while, but then I was like, okay, let's like steelman this a little bit and let me work through like what could a possibility thing. So first thing I tried to explain to her, there's this concept called mansplaining, and I told her that that's when a man describes something to a woman, usually condescendingly, and she was very happy to hear that. But then I moved on to kind of a more rigorous analysis, which is that there was a there was a so on YouTube, like YouTube kind of leans left because YouTube's algorithmically driven less than RSS, and so on YouTube there was a lot of right-wing deplatforming that happened, or deprioritization in like the 2016 to 2020 era. And then in 2020, there were a lot of right-wing people, or just center right, that got their stuff deprioritized because they were talking about COVID, and they'd get the COVID flag, and then they'd get deprioritized in the algorithm, shadow banned. And then there were a couple high-profile right-wingers who were straight up deplatformed from YouTube, right? And so on YouTube, you have this subtle pressure from YouTube. They were never like straight up like banning everything, but there was obviously like a big move to Rumble, move to other platforms, a lot of like, maybe I'm not safe here if I talk about certain things, I won't get as much reach. But on RSS, in the Apple Podcast app, it's way, way harder. Like the bar is much higher. Even if Apple and
you got to do something really extremist.
Exactly. Even if Apple and Google have the same politics, and they both think that, like Jordan Peterson shouldn't be on here or whatever. On Google, they can just, on YouTube, Google can just say, hey, he said this thing, let's just not promote him in the algorithm. Whereas for Apple, it's like, Alex Jones, we have to actively take him out of the store. This is a much firmer line. It's not this like steering thing. And so I think that a lot of the conservatives kind of kept growing very fast on RSS, whereas they weren't able to grow as fast on YouTube. And so that's kind of the balancing thing.
And I think podcasts in general are much more impactful on opinion. We've talked about this. Oftentimes, real sort of content and ideas kind of start in these sort of, maybe they go from a tweet to a long form podcast, and then they get cut down again into like a 20-minute YouTube video, into a 60-second TikTok, video. So I think one of the things, Taylor is obviously one of the top technology journalists in the world. Otherwise, she wouldn't be writing for The Information. And one of the things about this election cycle, and maybe the premise of her article might be a little bit off, is that it became obvious this election cycle that the Republican Party was more oriented around technology, right? And big part of that is because some of the biggest donors to the Republican Party are technologists, Peter Thiel, Elon Musk. And so I think that a lot of tech ended up aligning with that side because it was the party that was pro-technology, right? It was, how do we get Elon permits faster so that he can launch more rockets? How do we maintain our edge around defense in the United States, right? How do we support our sort of emerging defense industrial base? So the alignment and the sort of maybe shift right in the male podcast sphere, I think, wasn't even political as much as it was a business orientation, right? Because it was almost a survival mechanism.
Sure. Yeah. She was also drilling down on like, why is Joe Rogan popular, or why are these like manosphere podcasts popular? And I didn't have
That's like asking like, why is, Theo in the group chat popular? Because like, we like him, he's funny and he's got good takes, right?
Yeah. I guess she was talking in like kind of a relative sense of like, why are the manosphere podcasts more popular than like female-led podcasts? But I kind of rejected that premise because I think that there are plenty of female-hosted podcasts that are successful. And I was actually telling her like, we could be having the exact opposite scenario or the exact opposite conversation if the Democrats had put up someone. And I was thinking like, okay, so the like Kamala was like a prosecutor. She could have gone on like My Favorite Murder, you know, that show. I think that's woman hosted. Yeah. Very interesting. And she could have told some story about like the criminal gangs that she prosecuted, like, and it would be like the story of some criminal and she was actually involved and she's like co-hosting there. That would have been super cool and super different and super weird and like
gotten some super fans.
Yeah, and that's where I want that to go. But I think it was just like that campaign was just way too media trained, and it was like stay on message, stay on message, stay on message. When you get off message, you're word salad. But like I just reject the premise that like she's word salad when she's like just having dinner with someone. She's clearly like you don't wind up in that situation just being dumb. Like
the one thing I thought was interesting is Sarah told me that she heard hundreds of Kamala ads on podcasts, right? And that they were spending aggressively on podcast advertising,
but not,
right?
It's the 2008 playbook.
I genuinely did not hear a single Kamala podcast ad because I only listen to one podcast, which is Technology Brothers and Founders, so 2 podcasts. But I don't even listen to our podcast. We just record it live. We let our VP Ben rip it. So Founders,
and we don't do political ads. We do much more important ads.
We would do an ad if a candidate wanted to come on and talk to us about how they're leveraging fintech platforms like Ramp to run a more efficient campaign. True. We would do some type of integration like that, but not a straight political ad.
I would also have both candidates on to talk about their watch collections. Trump has a fantastic Vacheron Constantine.
Sure.
It's beautiful.
Sure. Yeah.
He has several solid gold watches. Kamala has a wonderful watch collection as well.
She's got some,
and Obama,
she's got good taste actually.
Obama through his administration, he wore a Secret Service watch that was gifted to him by the Secret Service.
Amazing.
I just thought that was so cool. Like, I don't think he's actually become a watch guy, and I think a lot of it was like, the everyman. Like, you don't want to show up. Like, Trump's whole brand is like.
You don't have to be a watch guy to have a watch you love.
Exactly. That it has significance.
Measure.
Significance.
Yeah.
And so that's where I would want to take the conversation.
Yeah, and for me, Kamala has a thing for Hermes, right?
Sure.
And it's sort of under discussed, but she's got, she understands. She's America, she's an American politician, but she appreciates fine European luxury goods.
Sure. Yeah.
That's what you want out of a politician, right?
I mean, the other angle for us, if we were to interview the candidates, would be to talk about, Donald Trump, the tech founder. And this is why it was so big when the All In podcast had him on, because they really stick to the unicorn.
They're
founders.
A political. They're arguably more of a political podcast.
Yeah, but
it's great that they'll have tech founder on.
Yeah, like Donald Trump, the founder of Truth Social. Well, that's great. Let's move on to some Q&A. But first, I need to tell you about Steinway & Sons. Founded in 1853 by German immigrant Henry Engelhard Steinway in a Manhattan loft, Steinway & Sons' pioneering handcrafted methods are still employed today to ensure uncompromising standards of quality. Steinway is more than a piano. It's the ultimate expression of passion, tradition, and craftsmanship. Whether you're an aspiring pianist, a professional artist, or someone who simply loves the power of music, or, let's be honest, just somebody who doesn't want to be caught dead with a Yamaha, Steinway is here to inspire every note you play. To discover the craftsmanship of a world-class instrument, visit Steinway.com. And here's a fun little tip. So everyone knows that you can visit like a Steinway showroom and play pianos, but I bet you didn't know that you can have them ship you a physical template of the piano that you're considering buying to lay out in your living room or in your house to see where it fits. I thought that was really cool. I'm sure a lot of companies would just go for like the augmented reality thing, but I like that physical, like you can lay out your whole room and it's like a cutout and you can see, okay, this is the one that fits. So anyway, we love Steinway here, but back to the show. Let's do Q&A. This comes from Ben. O steadfast guides, John and Geordie, hear my lament. For near 8 long years I have labored as captain bound to a vessel that will neither sink nor sail, a cruel jest played by fate. The golden dawns of ambition have now given way to Stygian twilight, the gleam of hope tarnished and bound in chains of mediocrity. Every course plotted, every wind sought yields only the same tepid tide, a stagnant pool where once roared an ocean of promise. The ledger of my soul bleeds red ink, the currency of resolve spent on visions that crumbled like clay under the strain of grasping hands. Tell me, venerable Geordie and John, is there a course uncharted, a horizon unclaimed that might deliver me from this purgatory? Must I forsake this craft wrought from sinew and sleepless nights to chase an uncertain new voyage? Or do I persist, a wraith bound to a dream now turned tomb, until the last ember of spirit fades beneath the cold, relentless gaze of stagnation? I seek your counsel, for the night deepens as my spirit falters. Guide me before the darkness swallows what remains. Yeah, so if you've been building for 8 years,
what's going on.
do you stick with it and hope that you'll have a breakout moment, find that product market fit, go exponential, or do you just try and sell your company, shut it down, get an acqui-hire, and move on to the next thing? What do you think?
This screams burnout to me.
Yep.
Right?
Yep.
There's a lot of, flowery language and the Ben, the guy who asked this, clearly an exceptional writer. But look, the guy's burnt out.
Yep.
He's sort of, I think anytime as a founder, if you're, if you lose that sort of ultimate vision, right? Like he's getting to a point where he doesn't quite know
Yep.
The path forward. And oftentimes as a founder, you have multiple paths forward. But if you're sort of there at this point where you can't make decisions one way or another, and you're sort of stumbling along, that doesn't feel good. That's burnout. This guy could go on a vacation. It's not going to really do anything, right? Because he's going to be on vacation thinking about the fact that he's burnt out.
Yeah.
Right?
So I actually know this guy, and I was on a call with him, and he came to me with a very, so he, for some context, they've raised a decent amount of money. They're he's paying himself a salary. It's not huge, but he's paying the bills, right? And he's in kind of stasis, right? And so he came to me with this idea of I want to make some more money for the company. I'm thinking about it was essentially lead gen, selling the leads that his company generates and isn't able to monetize and get down the funnel, sell those off. And I was just dude, I don't think you're thinking big enough. I think this is not the right path. I think this is it'll be,
it's not a path to a venture outcome.
Exactly. It's just not a path to anything exciting. It's just going to be mediocre. And so what I was telling was instead of burnout, I think you're right. But instead of going on a vacation, I told him he should just clear his whole calendar and figure out who the top 30 players are in his industry.
Yep.
The top 3 public company CEOs, billionaire investors, the big people. And you should just spend your entire month, the next month, just trying to get meetings with them.
Yep.
Just fly to where they are. Try and we saw this with the Truth Social thing. Go to Mar-a-Lago. Figure out okay, this guy owns a big company in this town. Go there, meet him, network, and then half the people I was mentioning, he was oh yeah, that guy cold called me 3 years ago when I was building this company, and we never went anywhere. I was well, call him back. And just try and see how you can be helpful, because it could be an acqui-hire, it could be a deal, it could be something else.
You do that for a month. If that doesn't go anywhere, you call up Jeremy Gaffon, Gaffon and Company. Yep. And this is exactly the kind of opportunity, we kind of
special situation.
I think you showed me one of the he forwarded his investor update or something like that. Not a bad company, right?
Nope.
5-6 million of ARR, growing 30% a year.
Yep.
That is a good business under most evaluations, but it's not a venture scale opportunity.
Yeah, it's tough when
anymore.
You've raised 15 mil.
And so go to Jeremy. He'll help figure out all the different sort of stakeholders and find a win-win going forward.
Yeah.
Your VCs have different incentives than you do, right? You've been in this business for 8 years. You still care about the industry. You're an expert in the industry, and with the right capital stack and approach to growth, this business could eventually sell for $50-60 million. And it's going to take a little bit of time to get there. But if you it really is a kind of it's no longer a venture product, right? So you're sort of treading water and not embracing reality. Going with Gaffon and Company is a much better option than just shutting the company down.
And people kind of know this deep down at the later stage where, if you're doing 100 million ARR, it's like, okay, private equity exists. Everyone knows Bain, KKR, all these companies that are very obvious and they're probably calling you, or strategic acquisition that could be very valuable, or maybe try and take the company public. But people don't realize that like this like kind of zombie stage where you've done Series A, Series B, but never really hit escape velocity. Those two options still exist. It's probably just something more like an acqui-hire and more like a special situations deal with somebody like Jeremy. So anyway, good luck to you, Ben. I hope you figure it out.
Hard pressed for a month, and then give Jeremy a call.
That's what I would do. Yeah, try and get the acqui-hire done. Try and get some weird deal done. Try and kind of just break something loose that's truly new and bold and has the upside. Don't focus anymore. Like, you've already built the business to the point where it's
your business
cash flow
is working.
Neutral. The business works. It's just not there. So you need to either take a really big swing of the fence with like a new partner, or do the acqui-hire, go mentor under somebody who's really successful, then get back into it, or sell the company and restructure the whole cap table with Jeremy or something. Anyway, let's move on to the timeline. So our first post comes from Guy, who is quote tweeting us. He says, "There's two Chad-looking guys in a suit discussing Goblin's tweet, and my note, I lolled IRL." That's great to hear.
That's great to hear. I mean, as much as we're here to deliver hard-hitting, business strategy, we're also here to deliver some laughs, right?
Exactly.
And just because we're dead serious about the show doesn't mean you can't, get some real enjoyment out of it. So,
and here he says, "Please, guys in suits, film yourselves earnestly discussing my tweets too." Well, here it is, Guy.
Here
earnestly
it is.
discussing
First of many,
tweet.
I would guess.
I think you're going to be in the regular rotation. You have a long path in front of you. But yeah, Goblin's tweet. I actually don't remember what Goblin's tweet was, but I imagine it being very deranged and having a lot of jargon.
Shit posting gets shit posted about a lot, but it's serious, right? It creates trend. It sort of influences the zeitgeist, and it helps us better understand the world. Yeah,
has a deeper meaning sometimes. So cheers, Guy. Get out there, post more, send us your best posts, and you might be on the show. Let's go to Max Meyer. Max says, "The upper Midwest is a 10 out of 10 region. It has everything. Chicago, a proper city, massive metro on an ocean scale lake. West Michigan, a temperate area warm enough to grow Chardonnay grapes." I didn't know that. "The largest arable land region on earth and the greatest college towns in the USA."
We should do a Technology Brothers meetup to do a wine tasting in the Chicago area.
We should host a live show in this Iowa stadium that he's posting at.
That'd be amazing.
A college tour.
Will it fit 100,000 people?
Yeah, that's the main problem. I mean, maybe if we add extra stands, extra seats in like the infield, we could fit 110. But I mean, we'd have to charge a lot.
It's gonna be tight.
Yeah, we'd have to charge a lot. Yeah. But I mean, you price gate eventually, and you get.
We'll live stream it. Yeah, everybody should be able to go.
Yeah, it'd be great.
Max has been, I think, very vindicated the last few weeks.
Yep.
The guy's been loud and proud about certain viewpoints that he has, and I think he's going to be on the right side of history on this one.
He was wrong about something, which I completely agreed with him on, and was that he didn't think Biden was going to drop out, and he bought like $100
I don't think
in
Biden
Polymarket
did either.
Yeah, he put like $100 on Polymarket when it was like, Biden to drop out 80%, and he was like, "I think it's fake. It's not going to happen. It doesn't make sense." Yeah. And I was like, "Dude, like, good job putting your money where your mouth works." Like, I believe that too, and we were both wrong.
I'm glad he didn't put the full Arena balance sheet on it because it's a great publication.
It is. I think we have a copy here somewhere, but
it's laying around here somewhere.
Yeah, Arena is fantastic. We had it in the first episode, but yeah, I'm really excited for more editions of Arena. And
he should potentially explore going to a daily newspaper, right? Because the news cycle moves quickly. I like something that you can just sit there and enjoy on the weekend and have a quarterly or monthly. Obviously, like, ramp up as fast as possible. It's the kind of thing that you get in the mail and you put it in your briefcase and you say, "I'm going to bring this on my next vacation."
Yep.
In a few weeks, and I'm going to just really sit down and enjoy this.
And
sort of very peaceful setting.
The design was fantastic, and the sponsors. He's monetizing. I saw a lot of
independent publishers say, "Oh, we're going to do fully reader supported." It's like, no. Max understands that the best content in the world should be monetized.
Yep.
It should be supported by companies that want to support the publication too, because companies, you shouldn't ban companies from supporting your publication, right?
I was looking at this week's Economist ad on the back, Cubitus. Tech Philippe.
Yep.
It makes sense.
We could do a whole deep dive on the Cubitus.
And if you read through the Economist, they do a great job balancing the ads. Like, it's not overwhelming like a lot of publications, but there's just enough, and it's just nice. And I look forward to flipping it over the Economist and seeing it. Who do they got this week?
The ads are, in the Economist, I would say that 80% of the ads are deeply relevant to me, right?
Yeah.
And so I look at it more of like a service, right?
Yeah, it's the same thing for Arena. Every single ad that they ran, I was like, this is cool. And I like this company more because they're supporting Max. So cheers to Max. Thanks for everything that you do. Let's go to Shane Copeland, the founder of Polymarket. What a great story. So he posts this picture of him in 2020, 4 years ago. He says, 2020, running out of money, solo founder, HQ in my makeshift bathroom office. Little did I know Polymarket was going to change the world. And man, what a setup. That is terrible. That was such a bad setup with the empty water bottle. And the mouse. He has a crazy mouse.
The mouse on the wicker basket is crazy. But, and the plastic water bottle. Yeah. I mean, I think Shane's somebody whose testosterone levels are probably so high.
He needed to
take off the edge and have some microplastics to bring it down a bit. But still, from the bottom to the top.
The best part about this is that if you look at the image, it looks like he got frustrated, punched the wall, and was like, "It's not working."
Yeah. He probably did. It's the testosterone. That's probably why.
That's probably he punched the wall and then was like, "Okay, I need to have
some
bottle."
microplastics.
Yeah, exactly. But man, what a run. What a run for Polymarket, and just dominant. I think they got like 80%, 90% liquidity on around the election. Just complete powerful outcome.
Yeah. What do we have any idea how much volume they did in the last month?
I think it was like $3 billion just on the presidential election.
Yeah.
And I think I don't know.
And
I think it was like 60-40 election versus non.
And now a bunch of
other stuff.
A bunch of sharp founders are actually creating markets to be able to short their companies.
We have a post on that.
So we'll get.
I tried 3.6 billion on. Wow, that's massive. Yeah. Am I going to be able to pull it up? It's too hard. There's too many here.
We'll get to it.
We'll come back to that one. But here it is. So Avi Schiffman says, never been more bullish on Friend. Please bet against my failure. And he's using Manifold, but I'm sure most founders will wind up on Polymarket pretty soon. And it says, will Friend have 10,000 daily active users by November 8th, 2025? And it's at 50-50 right now. And you can go and effectively short his company because there's been a lot of trash talking about this company.
For all the people that think he spent too much on his domain.
Yep, that was a big hot take.
I think he oneword.coms are back during the AI era. Obviously, Sam Altman saw what Avi did with Friend and decided I'm gonna get chat.com.
I think I saw Family just launched today, some crypto thing.
Do they have their .com?
I don't know, but
thought they had a .io.
Okay.
Maybe they have a .com.
They had the X
Family.
handle.
Yeah, which is at this point.
It's actually funny the branding of a one-word domain is so strong in AI that I assumed it was an AI company. Yeah. Like, some app to manage your family, but I guess it's a crypto thing.
But Avi.
But I love this.
Avi is
he's building a wearable for AI.
Yeah, so Avi's building an AI wearable. He
went viral with this very controversial video about going and living your life in San Francisco, but also talking to your AI friend. And having these like kind of Black Mirror-esque interactions. And I think the video was tuned perfectly to be not quite just techno optimistic. So it wasn't tone deaf. The people that made it and him.
But he's also he's a technologist, but he's not. He sort of has this understanding that technology is not always good or bad. Like sometimes it's sort of this neutral thing where there are going to be people, if he continues to execute, there's going to be people that become madly in love with their friend.com, wearable companion. There's going to be people that just use it here and there and like it's a part of their life and
some people might use it as their personal trainer.
It's going to be massively positive for some people. I'm sure it'll be negative for some other people. And that's just the nature of technology. It's impossible to say that any technological product is inherently good or inherently bad. And anytime you get into like binaries, I think it's, but overall, like this guy is putting it all out on the line. He's doing this sort of build in public approach, but basically saying every single week, I'm going to win, I'm going to win, I'm going to win. Not too dissimilar to Steinman, just sort of a different approach.
Yep, totally. Love it. Well, good luck. Let's go to Lee Edwards. He says, there hasn't been a better time to move to SF in 15 years. AI is here. In-person is back. Tech vibes are off the charts. Local government no longer run by psychotic clowns. Legal to build housing again. Equal marriage and abortion rights are the law. And he's quote tweeting someone that says, time to move to SF then. And I love this. I've always been super bullish on the Gary Tan, like anti-doom loop, boom loop.
No,
like,
the dynamic.
Let's make SF amazing like it needs to be.
Yeah. So I was born in Oakland Children's Hospital.
Oh, cool.
Family, has been all around the Bay for generations and generations. The Bay had gotten so bad that when I was graduating college, I didn't even consider moving back. And in fact, I remember year over year as a kid, my family, we'd go from Berkeley and we'd go over the bridge into the city. I remember just going less and less and less as I got older. Yeah. And it was because our sort of like family tradition was to go into San Francisco, park our car and spend the entire day just walking around the city, going to our favorite restaurants. And that just happened less and less and less as it got less safe and just less enjoyable to be there. And I just remember as we started to really needing to dodge certain streets and neighborhoods, and it just became like, it just became a little bit dark. And so I think for all the technology brothers out there, men and women, it's been this, over the last 4 years, you've had sort of Thiel and Elon align and focus on the presidential election. You've had Gary focus deeply on San Francisco and having San Francisco, making a lot of positive progress on things, simultaneously having new momentum at the federal level. San Francisco is going to benefit massively from both of those trends. So if you are, we're a media business, right? We're media businessmen. We almost have to be in LA. But if you are a young technologist, it's hard to argue against building your company anywhere other than Silicon Valley. Yeah.
There's the SF hate, I feel like, was always a little overrated in the sense that most people, by the time they're having problems with San Francisco, they're in a stage of their life where they can move to Marin, Palo Alto, Atherton, Incline Village.
It's really not an issue. It only becomes an issue once you have children, right?
Yeah, but at that stage, and I think that's probably part of why San Francisco got so weird, was because I lived in the Tenderloin at age 22.
Yeah.
I was 6'8", 250 pounds. Like, no one bothered me.
You're 250, brother.
It was fine. Like, it was dangerous, but most of the people would be like in the middle of like
wrong guy,
like dealing drugs, and they'd be like, no, they wouldn't even mess with me. They'd just be like, do you play basketball? Like, they would be so taken aback by my physical size that it was just not an issue. I remember going to some party in the Tenderloin, and there was a girl who was leaving, and the girl who lived in the apartment was like, you have to take my taser. Like, and I was like, whoa, that's crazy. Cause I would just walk around, but it's like total like privilege stuff. But then once you have kids, you're like, okay, I can't live that life anymore, but you can move to Palo Alto or Atherton or Incline Village.
So here's what I want to see. I want to see billion-dollar venture capital asset managers like General Catalyst and Andreessen Horowitz and people like Adam Newman. I want them buying up all the housing in SF, right? Okay. If you're really long SF, like I want Gary to be a slumlord almost, right?
But
like
not the opposite.
No, I'm saying he starts as a slumlord. He buys up all these, studio apartments that upgrades them, bugs them, and uses AI to process all that data so that he understands, oh, this founder hasn't slept in 3 days. Like,
get him a term sheet.
Get him a term sheet immediately, right?
Yeah, that's good.
No, but I think one way to go long technology is to go long SF. That's what Gary's done. And if you want to benefit from that boom, fund the startups. But then buy up all the real estate so you sort of recapture some of that value, because a lot of founders' paychecks end up just going towards their rent. So
it's great. Let's go to Will Manitis. Will says, many remarkable businesses that could exist don't because venture investors refuse to get creative with structure. If you took PE structuring brain and applied it to early stage investing, you'd see dramatically larger outcomes in traditional industries ASAP. And then Rune says, that's exactly how we ended up with the convoluted structure of OpenAI. And then Will says, does the nonprofit flip have a comp in PE? No, right? I know the structured capped profit units are classic. Interesting.
Yeah, so here's the thing. You meet something that's been happening recently is founders are going out and pitching VCs, and the VCs will tell them, is this a multi-billion-dollar business, or is this something that could get to 20, 30, 50 million of ARR off of like 1 or 2 rounds? And one of the challenges is a lot of those businesses, if the founders don't want to shoot for the multi-billion-dollar outcome, they could take like $2-3 million and just build a fantastic business. But the VCs in theory should be able to buy a lot more of the company than they currently are, right? So they're buying, like, if you want to go and if you're a YC company and the founders just want to build like a fantastic business or a wonderful business, as some people would refer to it, they're still getting 2 on 20 when I think that if you wanted to take a much more sort of PE style approach, you should be like, cool, that's great if you want to do that, but
we're going 50-50.
We're going 50-50, or we're going to buy, it's going to be 2 on 8. You shouldn't give the same terms, but the issue is there's so much competition. There's so many seed funds,
everything
so many pre-seed funds. The founders can just go and take 2 on 20 from some fund that
thinks it's going to be a monopoly, but it won't.
Exactly. And so right now the issue is there's just so much competition that I don't think you can get these sort of like PE. What Will's talking about is quite a bit more structure. And
he's thinking about like bringing in debt earlier, essentially.
Bringing in debt earlier. There's like General Catalyst buying a health system, stuff like that. I think all that stuff is cool, but it's hard to do PE styles early stage because there's just so many different people that will give you that 3 on 15 or 2 on 10 or 2 on 20. And I think that competition just drives up prices and ultimately lowers returns.
Yeah, that's interesting. I mean, I see it a lot in like deep tech, hard tech, where there's someone running a machine shop. It's probably going to be a great business, super important, but it might not have, monopoly supply. We talked about the drone motor company. Something like that is like critical to the supply chain for so many companies, but probably not going to have the margins of
should be a widget company,
fat,
right?
Exactly. And so it's like, how do you get the next generation of founders like excited and incentivized around that? Right now, the pattern is go lie to VCs. It's basically just tell them that you'll be $1 trillion company.
And the issue is if you take money with this venture narrative, you have to do a lot of things that your customers don't give a shit about. If you're making drone motors and your customers are like, you make great drone motors, I'm going to keep buying them. And then you're like, well, actually, we're drone motors as a service, and we're going to go, we're going to go sell our software. And they're like, okay, well, I like you because you make good. You make good drone motors, and I want more of those. It's funny because the classic business school case study is like XYZ company makes XYZ widget, and they do X amount of EBITDA, and like how would you lever it up to ensure that they can maintain profitability? I think what Will's getting at is maybe there's more of these sort of businesses that look like Gaffon and Co. That just take a unique lens on venture, which is to say we're focused on returns. We're willing to make investments to generate that we think can generate returns that fit this profile. Because in PE, there's a lot of PE funds that are like, we don't want a 30x at all. We don't care. We just want these sort of base hits over and over and over, and that's what we've told our LPs. So I think that what I was talking to you originally about, there's so many different seed funds that will give you 2 on 12, right? If you come in with a slightly different approach, there's opportunities there. If you're just thinking about it from the lens of we care about returns first and foremost. And I think even Bryce from Indie VC is taking this approach. He had created a really structured product historically with NDVC, but now he's just a $50 million fund that's saying we're looking for this unique type of founder that just wants to build a great business. And worst case scenario, you build a good business.
Yeah.
Best case scenario, you sort of build this generational company, and we'll make money either way.
Yeah. So maybe more permanent capital, maybe more debt financing, less of like a 10-year with a couple-year extension timeline, and then potentially a different target around zeros. Like a lot of early stage VCs are like, 90% of the portfolio is going to go to zero. A lot of the great growth funds right now have a no zeros mandate. Like they won't invest in something if there's any risk that it goes to zero, and then they're underwriting against like a 20% IRR. And I wonder what that would look like if you said, I'm an early stage investor, but I do different structured deals, but my hurdle rate for zeros, like less than 50% of my companies will go to zero, as opposed to 90% because I'm unicorn hunting. Very different. The unicorn hunting
maybe that looks
so
like
sexy.
leveraging.
Yeah, it became so sexy. It was like, if you can be the first investor in Uber and the rest of your portfolio is trash, like that doesn't matter because you got the stamp of like you got into the
that incentivizes
the
YOLOing, where people are like, this team's like okay, but it's a good category. We want exposure to this. Like, what's the sort of approach within venture world and angel investing of, I'm only partway convicted in this business, I'm still going to invest, which I've across like 50 angel bets, I've done that before where I'm like, I see some issues with this business, but I like the founder, so I'll do it. Yeah. Or the team is maybe like a 7 out of 10, but like the product's a 10 out of 10. Let's do it anyways. And I think that, the venture investors that are like, no, we're going to be, because the private equity world is just much more serious in the way that they evaluate companies, right? Yeah. Like they bring a seriousness to the asset class that is, for many funds, missing, right?
It's interesting. Let's go to Baselord. Baselord says, daily reminder that at least one of you needs to start an IQ enhancement company as soon as possible.
And my take is it's
already
been done.
8 years ahead of you, buddy.
10 points.
8 years ahead of you.
10 points.
Yeah, we know about the performance enhancing drugs for IQ. Caffeine, nicotine, some sleep, some exercise, high testosterone.
No, it's funny because the original Lucy pitch was smart nicotine. Yeah. Which intelligent nicotine, right? Yeah. But yeah, I think it can take different forms. I think that I think there's a big business to be made, what Baze is talking about, selling to technology workers to say, like, we're going to take a cohesive look at how to increase your IQ.
Yeah. I mean, Brian Johnson was talking about this to me.
And measure it.
He was saying that, like, people care a little bit about their health and longevity, but it's very abstract. But if you can tell them that you get on this diet and you will be performing better at work immediately, that has a much more acute ROI. And so you can kind of underwrite the hassle of doing the diet, and I think there'll probably be more of that. I'm not sure. Brian might be able to pivot into like becoming like the Brian Johnson of the mind might just be Brian Johnson, but it also might be someone new who's focused purely on that. Instead of longevity or instead of health or instead of athletic ability. But
yeah, I would invest in that business, a business that basically says like, we're going to test your IQ and then we're going to continue to test it quarterly and we're going to do
figure out all
different modalities, whether it's health,
I mean, that's the big thing is that like because of the way the FDA regulates these products, it's very hard for us. Like we can't put caffeine in our gum that has nicotine in it. You can't mix actives, but if you're more of like a health clinic, you could actually prescribe caffeine, nicotine differently. You could like move through these things and actually take more of like a holistic view in the same way that a lot of those men's health clinics look at your testosterone markers, your biomarkers.
They look at your sleep and your diet.
Exactly. Something like that for intelligence and performance in the workplace does seem very, very valuable if somebody can pull it off. But it's a hard business, and I don't necessarily think it's power law. I think it might be more of like, it's a consultancy, it's a clinic. There's Andrew Herr does this at Fount Bio, you know him?
Oh yeah.
And again, his is a little bit more just general health focused. It'd be interesting to see one of those branded purely as performance in the workplace. Yeah. Let's go to Gabriel. Do you know this guy? He's in Australia. He's the man.
I don't. I think it falls
obsessed with bodybuilding.
Yeah.
Great. Just great dude. Never met him in person, but all-time poster.
Yeah.
So he says, I often stumble across an internet phrase I don't understand that has a natural humorous vibe or cadence. Longhouse, many such cases, etc. An anime avatar just told me to get in the crystal. It's a beautiful crystal. We'll drop that at the office and see how it goes.
This was great at Hereticon.
Yeah.
We were in a conversation. There was maybe 6 or 7 people, and I think that David Senra was only. He's like not online, right?
No.
He's in books. He's focused. He's either recording the podcast, he's reading, or he's with his family. Yeah. And so going to one of the most online, offline events
or
of the year,
like networking.
It was funny because I'd have to be
60-year-old
like,
billionaires.
I'd have to be like, yeah, that's what basically like the longhouse means. Like,
yeah.
He's like, oh, okay, yeah.
That's great. Well, that's why we're doing this podcast. He'll learn all the brain rot terms through this.
Yeah, exactly.
This is really the bridge in the way that he's the bridge.
Every time a brain rot term or word breaks through to popular culture, there's already 6 or 7 new brain rot terms that are replacing it on the timeline.
And it is underrated.
We want to surface those, right?
Like the traditional like Gen Z brain rot is like skibbity toilet, Ohio,
the Rizzler,
right? The Rizzler. But then tech has its own brain rot terms, like word cell, shape
and it actually
rotator,
can be if you know those are like buttons that you can press in a pitch with a VC. Yeah. Whereas if you're saying the right brain rot terms, it signals in group, right? So even if you weren't a PM at Uber or you didn't go to Stanford. You can still signal that you're a part of that.
Extremely online. Yeah. I actually don't know what get in the crystal. It's a beautiful crystal means. Do you know what that means?
So I think we should. I don't know what that one means.
Okay, we got to figure that out.
We got to figure that out.
Gabriel, I want you to write in. Tell us the truth. What does it mean? Break it down for us.
No, but
in the replies to this video, I want an explanation.
There's people that sort of index YC companies. There's people that. A buddy of mine, Joey, is a Teal Fellow, and he's got like a whole fund that's kind of focused on just backing Teal Fellows.
Sure.
Which is super smart. I think we should create the Poster Index, which is a fund that's just dedicated.
It's a brain rot.
If you can post bangers, it is a proxy for your ability to get attention, which can drive customers and capital and all these things. So there is a
bit of a meme that it's like, oh, if a CEO is like posting too much, like the company must be doing poorly.
So here's the thing. So here's the thing. I think Augustus is every other CEO that wants to be a poster CEO should study him. Because he's coming out of the woodwork once every couple of days. Back to business. Right. And so there's this like, if
he's
I
not
see,
out there hunting. He's not the one
somebody's
posting like, oh, there's this meme that's going viral and everyone has their take on it, and so you like transform it into like, well, what if the Trump thing was about DocuSign? Like, and you're just getting 1,000 likes, but it has nothing to do with your business, and you're just like trying to get like Twitter clout. Like that's not what we're talking about here.
Yeah. I think that if I see a portfolio company CEO's name 4 times in the timeline per day and they're not selling to venture-backed startups,
risky.
It's a big. It's kind of a bit of a red flag.
There's a little bit of a Ballmer peak on the post.
Exactly.
Let's go to John Fio. Oh, this one's rough. So Adam Rankin posts, I promoted my GF, and she's showing an engagement ring, and so they're getting married. So congratulations to you, Adam. But Fio chimes in with something not controversial at all and says, we got to pool all the couples that announced their marriage and or child in the form of a startup business joke and study them very closely over the next 50 years and publish the report. We all deserve to know how these ended up.
I don't think you need 50 years. I think you probably need... I think you need 10. After somebody's crossed the sort of decade.
I think he's underweighting like norminess. Like there's so much.
I think a bigger part of the story here is something about the Warp team attracts. And I love Ayush, but it attracts dunking. Right?
Yeah.
They, like that's like the dunk rate is crazy.
Very high.
They almost.
It's good for engagement.
One of their head of growth, I think, said he was potentially going to go anon because
it was just too much dunking.
Too much dunking. But yeah, I don't know. I think there's they make Warp where Adam works, makes payroll software for businesses. If he's trying to sell to more startups, one way to do that would be announcing.
Make a startup joke.
You want to make people feel connected to you.
bring your marriage into the workplace and make a startup joke.
Yeah.
But no, I think
Theo might be under monetizing here. He needs to.
Yeah, no, I think Theo. I would study. If Theo wanted to start a research group that just studied things like this, I would donate.
That would be interesting. Kind of a Nat Friedman style.
Yeah, exactly. Public good.
I agree that there's something interesting there, but again, it's marketing, bro. He's got to pay the bills one way or the other. Let's go to Enchilada's Surfboard. Says 90% of defense tech investors couldn't tell you the difference between COTS and GOTS if their vacation homes depended on it. Do you know these terms? COTS and GOTS?
No.
So I dug into this. It's commercial off the shelf versus government off the shelf. And in some like early
so it's a dual. Yeah, I think a big thing with defense tech.
True.
Yeah, so exactly.
Like no one knows this stuff.
Yeah,
but like
thankfully I wasn't betting my vacation.
Is, like an early Anderol person, and it was like some early Anderol joke that like turned into this like.
Here's the, I guess, to simplify it. So, a lot of defense tech investors, when they're evaluating a business, or they're kind of deciding if it has sort of dual use applications, like. I am an advisor to a company called Aon, which makes tactical missile systems. And I made that bet because Naweed and Joe, the founders, are just phenomenal. They've made like 10 years worth of progress in about a year. And so I don't consider myself a defense tech investor. But one thing that was very obvious with their business is there's no dual use, right? It's not like they're going to sell some missiles to the sort of retail market or commercial market, and then it's all in on USG, right?
Sure,
if they don't get the USG as a customer long term, the business isn't viable, because then they can't even go international, right? Like they need to win that customer first. And so whereas deterrence has like a bunch of commercial customers where it's a viable business even without
like
partnering
securing
with
an
USG.
oil field or something, right?
Yeah.
Got it. Yeah. I need to dig into more of this, but I think the COTS versus GOTS thing is also related to Anderol's early like sensor tower development. Do you remember this? Like they built this sensor tower, and they were using literally like off the shelf gaming NVIDIA GPUs to run open source like computer vision algorithms like ImageNet. And so it was very much like hacked together from literally stuff you could buy at like a Best Buy, but they created a government product from commercial off the shelf, as opposed to the way a lot of the previous primes would do it, where it's like, okay, well, like, does it run Windows XP? Like we have to use the stuff that's government off the shelf, and that creates a lot. I think that's
so it's a component thing.
Yeah. It's more about like, do you have this attitude of like, can you just go to Home Depot and get the screw that you need, or do you need to acquire like the $150,000 bag of screws from Boeing, right?
Well, didn't Anderol do this with their latest suicide drone?
Oh, I don't know.
Where I think they were using, they had to
I don't
use.
think they call it that.
Different branding. FPV drone, whatever you want to call it.
Interceptor, tactical.
It's a suicide.
Surveillance.
It's a kamikaze drone. It literally blows up as it gets to the target. No, I think they ended up having to use Chinese components.
Yeah, some of them.
Because
some of them are just not available.
Make them here, but obviously,
I was talking to Trey about this. Like, apparently, there's only one tin smelting like organization in the United States, and they are only able to supply like 5% of the tin. And so it's like if you're in the business of like, okay, we need tin for something, it's like, good luck cleaning up your supply chain. Just wait 20 years for this one guy to like grow his business. Because
there should be a whole cottage industry of people that are looking at all these deep tech, hard tech, defense tech companies getting funded and being like, I'm going to go build PE style businesses to service these, like basically like manufacturing businesses, sourcing businesses.
But I think a big part of this is also just like breaking down the problem into something that's more manageable by like a startup engineering team. I talked to a guy who worked on the Blue Origin rocket engine and was comparing it to the Merlin engine designed by Tom Mueller at SpaceX. And one of the things that allowed SpaceX to iterate so quickly was that so when you see Starship go up, you see like the 36 engines. I think that's how many, or like a bunch of engines. It's a bunch of smaller engines. Every one of those engines, I think at one point, I don't know if it's true now, but like could fit in a pickup truck, in like the back of a pickup truck.
Yeah.
Whereas the bigger engines, you need a crane.
Yeah.
And so all of a sudden it's like the safety requirements, just the risk, the level of equipment, like anybody can drive a pickup truck. So if you need to take your piece of equipment, and so there's this question of like, how can you decompose something that is a larger capability like an F-35 into a bunch of suicide drones?
Yeah.
Well, the suicide drones are going to be able to be, okay, the pieces are smaller. You don't need cranes for everything. When you start doing these mega projects, things really, really slow down.
Yeah.
And so it seems like there's a lot of arbitrage right now in just deep tech, hard tech startups taking something really huge and then decomposing it into something that's more manageable and like a smaller.
This is even Valor's trying to do, just shrink down the size.
The nuclear
right?
reactor.
Nuclear reactors.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And the guy I was talking to is actually building fusion Avalanche, and it's small enough to fit in a truck, and so he's just like super pilled on that and like really wants to build that. Anyway, let's go to Luke Metro, Anduril employee. Love this guy. We need a God damn it. Completely unrelated to business. We need a liberal Joe Rogan. He literally interrupted Peter Thiel's speech about wokeness to talk about how the pyramids were actually X-ray power plants. What are you people talking about?
Yeah. Joe Rogan is liberal.
Yeah.
And he's talked about that.
Yeah.
He endorsed Trump.
Also, I think this just speaks to the fact that Rogan's like a one-of-one type of person. Like he's like a comedian that can pull like a huge group of people. He's a tinfoil hat guy who loves aliens.
I tip my hat to you, sir.
He's very conspiratorial, but then also loves UFC, and he's kind of combined all these different disciplines. And you can't just copy the Joe Rogan experience.
Here's a conspiracy.
Give me a conspiracy.
So Rogan is a liberal.
Yes.
He's voted Democrat like his entire life.
Yes.
He said this recently. And Trump is a Republican, but Joe Rogan endorsed Trump.
Yes.
And what is a link between Trump and Rogan? UFC.
Oh,
right?
Okay. Yeah.
Joe Rogan is one of the top commentators.
Yeah.
One of the top commentators for the UFC.
Okay.
Trump is arguably the biggest fan of the UFC, right? He'll leave the campaign trail to go be at a fight.
And so
maybe
WWE guy.
that's something there where Joe Rogan said, I'm going to put my politics aside and I'm going to back Trump because it'll increase the UFC's like notoriety and platform and put it on the map. Because I think that by the end of the next 4 years, UFC will be baseball will have to have sort of stepped aside, no longer America's pastime. America's pastime is combat and combat sports.
Well, then maybe if you want, maybe there's some precursors to building a liberal Joe Rogan. You need a liberal UFC.
Yeah.
And you need a liberal comedy circuit or a liberal
so maybe the
aliens.
angle, so the next 4 years, the Dems go heavy into UFC, AOC is sitting in the front row.
Or something different.
Or maybe
bare
she
knuckle.
starts.
Maybe they become the bare knuckle party.
Yeah.
Or car jitsu. Have you seen car jitsu?
That's good
where
too.
they fight in the car. That's good. Or pillow fighting.
Yeah.
Or any of the slap boxing.
Yeah.
They could do any of those, but they need to carve out one of the fighting sports.
Yeah, and I think just we need
and then the liberal Joe Rogan will emerge.
We need a liberal, we need a young Bernie who emerges through bare knuckle boxing.
There we go.
Yeah. That is probably the next Bernie. It's not going to come from some small town in Vermont. It'll come from
the next Bernie will be a slap boxer.
Yeah.
Let's go to Sahil Bloom. He says, a harsh truth I wish I could tell my younger self. There is no such thing as later. The journey to success is filled with laters. I'll spend more time with my kids later. I'll find more time for my health later. I have more freedom later. I'll enjoy myself later. The brutal reality, later never comes. It's just another word for never. Most of the things you say you'll do later won't be possible by the time you're able to do them. The kids won't be younger later. Either start designing your life now or live life with regret later.
Okay, here's a good example.
Yeah.
Yesterday, I made my 2.5-year-old son work the entire day doing deliveries of Aurora systems to high-profile celebrities around LA. To sort of support the launch. And this was a Sunday. A lot of people aren't working on Sundays, and I realized he's never going to be this young again and be able to grind this hard again. Like if I don't like allow him to do this, he's never going to forgive me. He's going to be asking me when he's 12, Dad, 10 years ago, like, why did you let me chill on the weekends? Right? Like, why wasn't I grinding? Why wasn't I figuring out he can't type on a computer yet, but he can lift one of these systems
That's great.
and carry it up a driveway and drop it off and ring the doorbell, right?
That's
He can do
fantastic.
that. So I think the lesson here is however old your kids are, you probably need to get them grinding harder and like yesterday, basically.
Yeah, I think that's maybe what this post missed. It says, I'll spend more time with my kids later. I'll find more time for my health later. What about levering up? Like you should be levering up now today.
The returns you're generating, today are because you levered up a month ago.
You should be
2 years
taking the
ago.
most risky bets today, not later. Like, I'll find a 100xer later.
Yeah,
right.
Yeah,
not going to happen. Let's go to Sean Frank. He's been on the show before. We love him. He says, paid advertising doesn't build brand. And then the crazy guy, I love this image. I don't think this is a real emoji, but it's so good.
Okay, so Ridge was a company that historically would never spend money on anything that wasn't directly generating revenue, right?
Really?
So they were, and so Sean has basically been on this for approaching a decade and has absolutely worked for them while Allbirds was doing brand marketing and these other D2C brands were doing
pop-up stores.
Yeah, pop-up stores, like big celebrity endorsements. So Ridge basically had spent probably $250 million on Meta ads before they ever did a collaboration with like MKBHD, right? So that's brand marketing. Now they do some brand marketing in the form of sort of these like massive giveaways, and they maybe do like some of it more now, but they're the reason that this tweet holds weight, and Sean is the perfect example of delivering like real business lessons in the form of shit posts. But the reason this holds weight is the Ridge brand is stronger today than almost any D2C brand in their category or cohort of like when they were sort of coming of age. So,
and you know what's interesting is that like these posts from both Sean and Connor build their brand so much. Like I now associate Ridge with incredible performance marketing. And now I want to pull out a Ridge wallet just to let everyone know, like
I care about ads.
I care about ads. I'm not kidding. Like I respect performance and I respect
marketing efficiency.
Marketing efficiency. Because it
is
it is a skill.
Is if when Ridge was one of the companies to really focus on direct response creator ads on YouTube, and I helped them do this back in the day. And when Ridge works with an influencer that says like, hey guys, today's sponsor is Ridge. I use the Ridge when I'm out fishing, but it also is great on date night. Like use my code in the description. That obviously builds a brand, right? They're aligning with a content creator.
And you see who they're advertising with and who they aren't. And so the MKBHD stuff, that tells you like MKBHD's whole thing is like super high production value, super cinematic, like really thoughtful analysis of these consumer goods. And so being in that milieu is much more valuable than someone else that they could advertise on. Like it's just they've cultivated like, what does your brand stand for? Like you could literally, if you're thinking about building your brand, just put together a mood board of popular influencers and then just go and sponsor them, and then that will be your brand. And it's like, what
Ridge,
do you stand
Ridge
for?
has probably 1 million guys out there that love Ridge because Theo Von loves Ridge. And Theo Von is probably has for the last like whatever is since Sean initially did the deal with him, he's probably objectively more of a wallet salesman than a comedian, right? Like he's one of the top wallet salesmen in the world. He can go and sell out comedy clubs, but he's selling wallets at a higher velocity than anyone
I mean, it's
else.
the same thing with Red Bull. Like you look at like Max Verstappen and everything that Max Verstappen stands for with like this like relentless ambition, like crazy energy. And I just get like that's what Red Bull's brand is now because of that. And so this idea, very, very, very valuable and certainly underrated. Let's go to Raul, zero interest rates. He says it's the first day in Williamsburg and he sees a spray painted sign on the concrete for an ad for Sonia AI therapy. listens better than your ex at Talk to Sonia and a call to action for the App Store. What do you think about this IRL advertising? Is this legal? Can you just do this? Like, why are we not? Is there a company that will just go spray paint everywhere?
It's kind of like they don't advertise because
Okay.
it's very I think
illegal.
it's illegal.
But
Like it's basically like vandalism.
Yeah, it's vandalism.
I don't.
But you could go viral like this. I mean, this got 40K views. That's probably more than people just walking by.
The play is to probably do that once in your backyard.
And then have a friend post it and have it be interesting and weird. It won't go viral if it's just something boring, like whatever was under here before.
I think this is, in general, I'm not a fan of this type of marketing because I think it makes the world a more, nobody likes ads more than me except maybe you.
Yeah.
Right? So we love ads. But in general, I'm not a fan of vandalizing property. We did a little bit of this at Party Round, but it was more like using an existing graffiti wall and putting an ad on that, which is designated as a place for graffiti.
Yep.
But yeah,
out of home is very
there's more.
interesting.
I think that an ad space that's underutilized is the planes circling SF. Like I'd like to start a Technology Brothers advertising division that has planes every single day flying over SF that you can sponsor, which is like for Sonia, it might be like you get no women, talk to Sonia, right? And if that was flying, if you're like a Meta PM and you walk out and you look up from your what's that app that they all use the like blind, you look up from blind and it's like you get no women, talk to Sonia. That's like probably, and there's a QR code you can zoom in and scan.
It's great.
I'm more of a fan of that.
I do remember what was it, back in like 2018-ish maybe, there was this, like when Bird the scooters came out and Lime and it seemed like tech just realized like the sidewalk is free real estate, I guess, and you can just put stuff there.
So here's a crazy story. So I was working with a startup back then that I just moved to LA, and I was basically like, you don't need to pay me. I just want to help out. I'll do it for equity. And we started doing these sort of like marketing stunt things. And it was a skincare company. And so I had the idea to go put hotel like door hangers, and I went and put them in Santa Monica. I put them on like 500 Bird scooters in a day, and within the same day we got a note from the chief legal counsel or whatever from Bird being, it wasn't quite a cease and desist, but it was like stop right now. The next step
so funny because like you're doing the Bird thing to them.
Yeah, it was perfect.
That's amazing.
And,
when that was happening, I was like, wait, so it's just free real estate if you have wheels? Like, can I just set up like a corner store on the sidewalk if it has wheels under it? Can I set up a gym or whatever I want? Like, is there any business that you can't stop? It was a wild time. And I think most cities wound up developing.
I'm surprised there wasn't like a Bird for snack bars. Like people that are just like, here's like a vending machine. Like I'm just gonna put it right here.
Let's go to Aaron Slodov.
It's still one thing. It's still under discussed that I think Bird's like real downfall started with that social media account that was like Death to Birds, or I forget what it was called.
I remember that.
And that was some of the best entertainment of the era if you were a technology brother, because you could go see a bird get thrown off like an 8-story skyscraper.
And that's just like, that speaks to like the childish teenage boy in everyone. It was so entertaining. I remember following that. Yeah, that was really, really bad. They should have sent the cease and desist to them. I'm sure they did, but it didn't work.
Because it basically just encouraged everybody to like
go viral, like just do stuff, and it just like made it feel like, and it was so destructive, like destroyed the environment, so messy, and they were destroying cars if you run over them. It was a mess. I was really happy when they banned them in my town. But also like weird mimetic stuff. You know that the founder was also named Travis, and he was a former Uber guy. So it's one of those things where it's like, well, of course you back Travis from Uber. Right?
Travis from Uber.
Yeah, exactly. It was a wild time. So Aaron Slodov says, creator economy should be reappropriated for manufacturing, TBH. Yeah, I like this. This is good because it's like you're creating actual things instead of just content. But also, don't appreciate the anti-content slander, bro. This is a real job.
Yeah. Well, Aaron is a content creator. He probably gets pretty decent X payouts.
Yeah, and he's written
content
some
creator
big,
and he's a manufacturer.
and he wrote that big piece for Pirate Wires, the Industrialist Manifesto, the techno Industrialist Manifesto. Yeah. I wanted him to punch it up and give it a more controversial name, like B2B SaaS is dead or something like that.
Yeah,
something that will get people angry, but couldn't get that across the finish line. But very, very good piece, very long. Recommend you go read it.
We need content creators out there creating courses that say, here's how to make $1 million in manufacturing.
Right?
That's
buy a
CNC.
That's
what actually,
the
stop the Shopify, drop shipping, your
Yep.
TikTok shop stuff.
Andrew Tate's just teaching you how to use a lathe.
Yeah, start a small scale manufacturing business in your hometown.
Yep.
That is the way. We need to change the culture.
Apprentice under some 75-year-old guy who's been making, hubcaps for the last 50 years.
Yeah, all those guys are going to end up shutting their business down because they do like $300,000 a year in profit. Is not really.
But that's enough to
pay.
That's enough to pay the monthly fee on a Lambo.
Yeah.
So you could literally be the hustle porn guy, go and do that, and actually wind up with the Lambo.
Yeah.
Grow it a little bit.
Yeah.
Just don't bring in DocuSign. just run it.
Run lean. Those DocuSign contracts, they can get up into the 8 figures real quick.
Yeah. Let's go to Patrick Blumenthal. He says,
Pat, my boy.
Loud nightclub. So what do you do? Drone targeting mostly. Oh, loan marketing? Do you like it? Well, it depends on the coverage area. Why? Well, most guys I know who are in finance don't really like it. It's the American Psycho scene.
That's great.
This guy's just a meme machine. He's a machine. I don't know how he puts out so much of this stuff. Everything's hand photoshopped. He has no one on his team. He's just like content mastermind.
Well, he's a venture capitalist. He needs to be the media.
He's supposed. Right? But I mean, the dude's been to Ukraine like a bunch. Have you talked about this?
Yeah, of course.
I was on Pirate Wires with him a while back, and it's pretty.
We
crazy.
We hit the range together a couple months back.
Oh, cool. Yeah.
It's good.
He was telling me about that, I think.
Yeah. He had to train up before his last mission.
But yeah. American Psycho is just like an endless pit of memes that just it really speaks to people.
Yeah, one of the most. I used to not really understand when my parents would be like, "Oh, this movie's a cult classic." But now you understand, like when we show our kids Borat when they turn 8, like we're gonna be like, "It's a cult classic." Like,
yeah. It is interesting. I wonder if there's something deeper here about like the defense tech guys being like the modern Patrick Bateman. It still doesn't feel that like. Did you know that Christian Bale in American Psycho was like something like 25 years old? Ben, you should look this up.
He was 25 when he filmed that?
He's definitely in his 20s, and it's crazy because he's playing. It's almost like he's playing someone older. Like I feel
totally.
like
He's playing like a late 30s.
That seems right because he was 25 in the movie. Yeah. So Patrick Bateman, the character, has to be over 25 just based on the track. Unless in the 90s you could make VP at 25. Is that possible? I know the youngest MD at Goldman Sachs ever was in his 20s. The character's 27. Wow. That's wild. So that might have been like a little embellishment by Bret Easton Ellis.
It's funny because last night I had this wild moment where I pulled up to the gate in my neighborhood and the security guy goes, "Jordy, like my son just passed the bar." And I was like, "That's amazing." And my second question was, "Dude, how old are you?" I thought you were my age. I seriously thought he was exactly my age. Wow. I never asked. And he's like, "Dude, I'm 46.
Oh, there you go.
And he's like, I just had kids young or whatever.
Yeah, that makes sense.
But yeah, awesome. I feel like something about that sort of like 90s, early 2000s era movies, like all the actors and actresses.
Wall Street was definitely this idea that you could go to Wall Street and finance in New York and in your 20s make it to the top. Yeah. And that's 100% true in Silicon Valley and tech, even today.
Yeah.
But I don't think it's been true in Manhattan finance for decades.
No, because you have, over time, you need to create a ladder to keep people in their place.
Yeah.
Right?
I know like a few guys that went and started funds pretty early, like hedge funds, and they trade public stocks.
But you still want to go work at a fund first.
Yeah,
and
exactly.
Get that on your resume.
All of them are in their 30s by the time they do that. But man, what a wild time! It would have been fun if Wall Street had been able to like keep that culture of like just such a meritocracy that yes, a 25-year-old can be a VP or an MD or whatever.
Yeah.
Like, I think it'd be a lot cooler, and I think a lot of people would be going into it, and like,
Yeah.
it would be much, much hotter.
Make finance great again.
Yeah, just more meritocratic, I guess.
Yeah.
But a lot of these firms have like calcified to the point where they're not as
Yeah, because these
mentorship
guys,
driven.
if you're 28 and you want to make $50 million now,
yeah,
you raise a $500 million fund
Yep.
with your absolute boy, and you take,
Yeah.
that's the only way to do it. You can't just go do the right deals because the fees will get eaten
Yep.
away by the more senior partners.
Yeah, tricky. Oh well, we'll bring it back. So Nate O'Brien says, why would I pay an American $100,000 a year when I can hire someone just as qualified in Argentina for a quarter of the price?
Okay, so Nate's smart, but when and I think this is generally a good take. I think more people need to be looking at.
Say why not both?
Yeah, why not both? I think my counterpoint to this is that I like working with Americans, like both recent immigrants, but also just
In
Americans
person, too.
in person.
In
Working
person
in
is
person is
valuable.
great. I like. I think that it's there's nothing that beats even what we have right now, right? Which
Yeah.
is you, me, and our vice president Ben in the same room,
Yep.
in an office, making a wonderful media business,
Yeah.
right? You can't
Generational.
a generational, wonderful media business, very profitable. You can't sort of like there's no amount of like awesome virtual employees that we could have that could recreate this feeling. Like you can't recreate it in Slack. So I just think part of the reason to pay a premium is so that you can all be in the same room together.
Yep.
And I think if you're operating a remote structure, then you really have to start questioning.
Yeah. You know what? The cure for male loneliness, it's paying $100,000 to an American.
Exactly.
To just hang out with you.
They have to be your friend.
And then they just have to
Hey,
be,
you want to grab lunch?
You have to
They're
be
like,
hanging out.
You got to.
Yeah. It's worth it. It's worth it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But I do think there's going to be this, there will be this sort of cultural movement over the next 20 years where people are like, first it was buy American, then now it'll be like hire American, like keep those jobs here.
Yeah. But I mean, realistically, you need both. But I like that take. That's good. Well, cheers to Nate. Back to Will. Will says, work dinner should be illegal. They rob you from your family. You pretend to enjoy drinking with strangers, get home late and feel horrible the next day. Work breakfasts are aristocratic. Separate lazy boys from early to rise men. Feel great when you get to work. Early, easily expensible. It's a great take. Great take.
Great take. I do feel like that about most. The only time you should be having a work dinner is if you're closing a deal.
Yep.
Like funds wired, everything's
it's
done,
a closing
and it's
dinner.
celebratory.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
Doing a work dinner
just to get to know someone.
To get to know
weird.
somebody is a waste of time.
Yeah.
I always suggest lunch.
Yep.
I don't really like doing coffees that much because I know the schedule I want to have caffeine on, and I don't want to like plan meetings around that.
Yeah, this is my hot take against the 996 thing. I'm all for working 100 hours a week, but I think you should work 666 almost, or something. That's a little demonic, but I think you should not be working 9 a.m. to 9 p.m. You should be working 6 a.m. or 5 a.m. to 5 p.m. Get home, have dinner with the family, because then if you wake up at 5, you can hit the gym, you can go to a work breakfast, you can have a full 8 hours in the office.
We do.
And then you can get home with the family, have dinner, and play, watch movies, do all the things that you want to do with your family.
Yeah.
That early morning right before 9 a.m., it's really hard to have like true engagement with the family in the way that you can at dinner. You can go out to dinner, you can cook. There's a lot of
we do the
things.
Hormozy, method, which is
work first, family second.
9, 5, 7.
Okay.
9 to 5, 7 days a week.
Oh, okay.
Right.
Yeah.
So you can have the morning moment with your kids.
Sure.
You can have dinner, but you're doing 8 hours a day every single day, which is much better than 5 days a week doing 12 hours a day. You actually get more done doing the 9, 5, 7.
Yep. I like that. They should ban work dinners. Easily doable on Ramp. Just ban any
no expensing
after
5 p.m.
and unlimited before. Hopefully it gets implemented. Let's go to Ryan. I think it's pronounced Macintosh. Is that right? It's spelled a little bit different than Macintosh. But Ryan says the DocuSign all hands and posts the Dune photo, which I love.
It's seemingly pretty accurate.
You know,
How do they?
The funny
somebody
thing is
needs
that
to.
I've literally made this exact same joke about the A16Z all hands.
Yeah.
With a massive festival.
No, I pitched the full partnership. It's
huge. It barely fit in the boardroom.
Yeah. No, but
but man, the DocuSign thing, like 5K likes, it's just constant banger. Everyone knows
every time.
DocuSign
Yeah.
has too many
Hey, if
employees.
you're an up and coming poster and you've been struggling to get hits,
this is
post a DocuSign.
Yeah, this is the modern like you know how people used to post the 2-factor authentication screenshot from Apple, and they're like, this is the best feature Apple's ever made, and it would go viral every single time.
Yeah.
And,
no, so here's the real alpha. So Taylor Lorenz.
Yeah.
When you listen to this, if you want to, sort of regain and sort of like sort of an olive branch to the tech community, is to go and get hired by DocuSign and get pictures at their next all hands, because that would be an amazing Taylor Lorenz investigative journalism behind the scenes at a DocuSign. And what if it is like this? I could see it being like that. They're like, hey guys, we're going over to the Giants stadium for the all hands. Like the buses are, and she's on the bus like Project Veritas style.
I
like,
love that. Project Veritas. Yeah, we definitely need the information to do Project Veritas for DocuSign. What's going on there? What if it's all just like the most cracked engineers you've ever seen? They don't have a single salesperson. They're just building the most deep tech. They've implemented. They've built their own kernel, their own operating system.
DocuSign's awesome.
What if they have custom silicon for signing?
I bet they do.
All the way down. It's
Speed.
Like Google has the TPU. DocuSign has the DPU.
I think DocuSign should
the
add
DocuSign processing unit.
DocuSign should add autonomous drones that take off from these sort of centralized places.
Yeah, they need a humanoid
and they come
robotics
film you signing it.
Yep.
Or they have a little printer that like prints it out.
Yeah, well, if you need a notary, in person.
Yep.
What if you could have a humanoid robot come to your house when you're signing the mortgage papers? The humanoid robot is acting as the whatever they call it, the
I want a dog. A dog
robot
notary.
Yeah, exactly. Notary. That's it. Yeah. Let's go to Bobby Goodlatte. He says, success should be celebrated in tech, not demonized. I want to see more startup founders looking like this post-exit, not apologizing. And it's Elon Musk with his McLaren F1.
Okay. 2 things. 1, Bobby is this authentically.
Yeah.
I was walking up to Faina for Hereticon. I see a fantastic blue Ferrari.
Blue.
Yeah, the sort of really nice metallic blue. I don't know the exact color code, but fantastic Ferrari pulls up, valet.
Yours was red or black?
Mine was gray.
Gray. Okay. Subtle.
A little more subtle. Yeah. It was a daily. It was a daily.
You gotta go red with the Ferrari.
Red
or
white.
458?
No.
Oh, what was his?
His was his was a 458.
Fantastic.
I think he'll correct us in the comments. But
let us know.
no, but Bobby's living the brand. He's sort of being a real leader here.
Yep.
I think one of the challenges and the reason that supercars haven't become more popular in Silicon Valley is that you just can't street park a McLaren or a Lamborghini or a Ferrari or a Bentley. It's
and
just
you're going
too
to
high
like
risk.
coffee shops to meet with C-stage founders.
In Gary Tan, San Francisco, you're going to be able to street park an Enzo, street park a LaFerrari, street park your P1. And that's something that, Sam Altman and Elon and Gary can agree on. And so they can all kind of like come together, because we need safer streets in San Francisco.
Yeah, I mean, they also need to fix the streets and make sure there's no potholes, because if you're driving a P1 GTR...
Well, that's why the G-Wagon is such a popular car in Los Angeles. Is the streets are actually so bad. You need you need something that's 4-wheel drive. You need good sort of like
we need perfect pavement for the sports cars. But I mean, there is this interesting thing where it became this like status symbol to say, oh, I drive a Prius or whatever. But I think people realize that like the flashy cars, I hope that people can realize that it's not like, if you are an engineer and you respect engineering and you made money in technology, it's okay to respect the engineering of a car. And it's okay to appreciate something that's like that's like beautifully made.
Like after Atomic
Gordon Murray car, it's like it's incredible. It's like it's iconic, and there's so much to love about this. The McLaren P1 or the F1, they wanted to reduce weight so much that the CD changer in the front trunk, they made special magnets for it.
Crazy.
To spin to save like 50 grams from the CD changer.
Yeah.
They didn't take the 6-disc CD changer out of the
Seeing
car.
how, as a technologist, how can you not appreciate that?
Yeah.
So
here's the
gotcha. So everybody likes to say, Sam Altman had this thing of he didn't own equity in OpenAI and all this stuff. Which
the bull case was always the car collection.
But they would always post pictures with him and his car collection and say, see, he does love money. Look at him driving this P1 or all these other cars that he has.
He had an F1.
It wasn't about
it
was never about money. It was about experiencing beautiful products.
Exactly.
And that's why people don't realize about buying a supercar. You're buying a potentially daily experience with a one-of-one product.
Something that's excellent.
And so if we want Sam to build safe AGI, supercars are a perfect example of that. They go through rigorous safety testing to build this incredibly high-performing vehicle. And we want anybody building AI to be experiencing a supercar, right? Because it's a good parallel for sort of AI safety, and you can have performance and safety at the same time.
It's very hard to imagine like living on the power law and driving a power law outcome without enjoying and respecting power law outcomes everywhere. And there's no car that's more of a power law outcome than the McLaren.
I want to see the average YC founder leaving Uber or Meta, joining YC, and sleeping in their supercar outside of the YC offices, right?
This is what they say.
You can
sleep in a GT3 RS, but you can't race a house.
Exactly.
We know this.
Yeah.
Founders, get
supercar,
please. I'm begging you. So this is a reaction from Sophie, NetCap Girl, to a post by Dakash Gupta. He says, recently I started telling candidates right in the first interview that Greptile offers no work-life balance. Typical workdays start at 9 a.m. and end at 11 p.m., often later, and we work Saturdays, sometimes also Sundays. And Sophie says, posting stuff like this is so cringe. It's fine to have a culture that self-selects for people that will put in long hours. You want people committed to the mission, especially in the early days of a startup. But posting about it is just status signaling, grind set, hustle thing. What do you think?
Yeah, I've never known somebody that posts about how hard they work that actually genuinely works hard. And so,
except for us, but yeah.
Yeah, but yeah, that's we feel that's a part of our mission to promote hard work.
Yes.
But yeah, ultimately the people that work the hardest are not tweeting about it. They're not posting on LinkedIn. They're not doing that. They're legitimately working really hard. And if you ask them about their schedule, they'll tell you, oh, I do 996, I do 957, whatever their schedule is. But yeah, Elon, when pressed on, tell us about your schedule. You're doing all these things, right? He'll say, oh yeah, I work 20 hours a day, 7 days a week. But he's not out there like just logged another 20 hours. Like he's a top poster in the world and he's not being like just logged 20 hours. Here's a link to our SpaceX job board. Don't apply if you're not. So I think Sophie's right. It's a way to get attention. Maybe that'll work well. But I don't think it should be coming from. I think that's the kind of thing you want. If you do an interview with a candidate and you're like, this person's great, you pass them to your CTO to interview next, and that engineer wants to ask the CTO, what's the work schedule? They can be like, oh, we work really long hours. People are online constantly, but it shouldn't be the CEO leading it being like,
sure,
just so you know, like to somebody who's like, the candidate's like, dude, this is 1 out of 30 interviews I'm doing, and like I don't even really want to join your company, and now you're telling me like don't join if you're not. It's just gonna like.
Yeah. Also, I mean, the timing on this stuff is like super important. Like a few years ago, when Google was like, well, there's 20% time and family leave and pet leave and bereavement leave and like a million reasons to take time off. It was pretty countercultural to be like, hey, actually, like our startup works pretty hard. And that was novel, and that got a lot of attention for the right reasons because maybe there was something there. But then pretty quickly it became like, okay, now like it's kind of status quo, and if you're just jumping on this train right now, it's like coming out and being like, I'm bravely anti-DEI. It's like, okay.
Yeah,
like,
so
you're not Coinbase.
Good Google story. So my little brother in my fraternity he did an internship at Google in 2017, and I happened to be in the Valley working with a startup at that time. This was like a summer period, so it was like a 3 to 4 month internship.
Yeah.
And he, by the end, his manager was like, Peter, like, I really like you, but like, you objectively have done no work. Like, I don't know how I can sort of write a positive review. And Peter had, in the lead up to that summer, he had maxed out a bunch of credit cards to buy Ethereum and Bitcoin.
Oh my
and
God.
It absolutely paid off. Yeah. Like, he just like became like very wealthy because of it. And I'm sure he's, if he's listening to this, I'm sure he's like got his like whatever
Bitcoin ticker
ticker up, and he's just like still excited about it. But like, the guy just basically like went so long crypto on credit cards that by the time he got to his Google internship, he was just like, yeah, I'm like low key like the wealthiest kid that I know. And so he would graciously have me over to work out in the gym.
Great.
Salmon dinners.
Fantastic.
And that was the only real like time that I spent at the Google offices. But it felt like a college where people were kind of like doing the bare minimum to actually like get by and just wanted to have fun and enjoy their time on campus.
Makes sense. Let's go to Naval. He says, good VCs should be their own media. This is
a banger because
Naval's the master.
Yeah, Naval's the master of taking something that is widely
how to get rich without getting lucky.
Yeah,
that thread, phenomenal. Yeah. Got him on Joe Rogan.
Yeah.
Then Eric turned all of his tweets into a book.
Yep.
He's like phenomenal at this.
Yeah, but taking this sort of
but
he's good at
so he's
brevity.
talking about this, but he's also lived it, which is great.
Yeah.
But yeah. So many other VCs have done this well.
Yeah, I think
Harry Stebbings.
Yeah, even the work that Eric did on the book, I think Naval's known for posting, being one of the top posters in the entire world in his own way, right? He's very oriented around brevity and taking big ideas and putting them into whatever, I can't see from here, but 6 or 7 words.
Yeah.
But even the book, Eric's book,
the
like,
Almanac over
Naval
like, Ravikant.
That turned him into he's one of a handful of people that are true tech philosophers.
Yep.
And
this is a big deal for Naval.
This is
I
why
didn't think about it because I kind of knew Naval and the book was based on the tweets, and so I didn't think the book was going to be that big of a deal, but it was huge. And it got translated into a lot of languages and really opened up the business.
This is why anybody that's an LP out there should go and invest in Pat's fund, right? Pat Blumenthal, incredible poster. You're sitting here like 30 minutes ago saying like, how does he keep coming up with this stuff?
Yeah.
He's just like, and Pat will get more impressions in the next year than most GPs in the world combined.
And it just completely flips the model from like, okay, I need a horde of analysts cold calling companies to they come to me.
Venture's all about likability and access, right? And like likability plus attention gets you that access.
Yep.
And founders want to take money from people that they like.
Yep.
So if you're a likable person, you should be doing more media, more posting, more podcasts, etc.
Yeah, it makes a lot of sense. Let's go to TJ Parker. Former founder, sold his company for $1 billion, I believe, to Amazon. Now at Matrix Ventures, right?
Health tech investor.
Yeah, health tech investor. Phenomenal car guy.
Great collector.
Fantastic
enthusiast.
Car collection. Every time I post something stupid about cars, he always replies with some really good insight. I can bait him. I can bait him into telling me about cars.
So he's got the coolest car club in America. I think.
Yeah, that's right.
In Park City.
Have you been?
I haven't.
Okay, we got to go at some point.
He's basically spent a bunch of his own money building out this incredible facility that's becoming the hub of car culture in Utah. And I think what he says he had to take a while back that like really resonated, which is that Teslas should not be allowed to classify as a black car on Uber.
Oh yeah,
because there's nothing worse than like paying to like get like a black car on Uber, and then this guy pulls up in a Model S, and you're like, dude, like give me a break, like. But
Here he
Anyways.
says, my 2 cents, don't bring your co-founder/team to an initial meeting with an investor. It's great to introduce them later in the process, but early on it cripples your ability to build a relationship. If they're complaining about not being included, you can show them this tweet. It's so funny because this is clearly a subtweet where he had some
Get an argument
as an investor with a founder, and he
Yeah.
brought the whole team, and it was like a very messy conversation.
No, but sometimes
Makes sense.
this can totally create, if you have two founders that are both people
Yep.
and like good at fundraising, it creates this dilemma where, oh, it's an important conversation, we should both be on it. And I 100% agree with this.
Yep.
Two people cannot connect.
Yep.
Like if we had a third person here that was
Yep.
constantly butting in, like our rhythm would be totally thrown off.
Totally.
And I think that you're much better off. Take the first call
Yep.
solo, take even a second call solo.
Yep.
As you actually build that relationship and that rapport and interest in partnering, then bring in the rest of the team. But it totally throws off the vibe.
Typically, like the
Yeah,
co-founders and team are like operating. They have a ton of stuff to do. They don't need to take a bunch of intro meetings with a bunch of VCs.
No,
it's just ask dumb questions.
It's a totally negative signal if somebody is.
Oh yeah, my CTO can totally be on 40 investor calls this week. Yeah, right.
Yeah.
No way.
Yeah.
Good post. Back to Aaron Slodov. He says, venture capital now. I just led a $50 million Series B into my 4th calendar scheduling app this year because their Zoom integration reduces meeting conflicts by 6%. The founder went to Stanford and worked at Stripe for 8 months, so downside risk is basically zero, plus their deck had really clean margins. Venture capital in the 1600s, which is funny. You went to go so back.
Yeah.
So far back. I just funded an armed fleet to conquer the only islands in the world that grow nutmeg. If we seize their nutmeg trees and eliminate all competition, we'll make 60,000% returns and become more powerful than most European kingdoms combined. Man, this really resonated. 14,000 likes.
Yeah.
Million
Venture
views.
capital is mainstream.
Venture capital is very mainstream, and I think everyone's dissatisfied with the risk that venture capitalists are taking these days. Too many.
Yeah,
safe
I mean,
bets,
I wasn't the
weird
first.
stuff.
There's the remind me of the Power Law of that book.
Yeah, Sebastian
Doesn't it talk
Malbach?
about like whaling was some of the first like
it started
venture?
with whaling. You'd pay
It'd
a
literally
ship
be like,
to go out
here's
there.
the ship, here's a captain, here's a team.
Most likely, it's not coming back, but if it does, you're rich.
Yeah.
Yeah. Wild.
Yeah. That and the carry model emerged from that.
I think so. Yeah.
That's amazing.
Essentially. Yeah.
Amazing.
And you need a management fee up
every
front to pay for the boat.
every time you get a carry check, think back into the 1600s.
Yeah.
when
Light
they
up
were
your
whaling.
whale oil lamp and and feel.
Breathe it in.
I was at a nuclear conference and I was talking to a guy who does like AI data center build outs, and he was talking about the importance of energy and just the fact that these AI
Dude, we should make a whale blubber candle to help VCs manifest carry checks.
Oh, that's good. I like that. Yeah.
Like a little circle set up where they can just sit in the middle of it and just like kind of breathe in the. Probably smells a little bit.
Yeah,
whale fat, but
but his joke was that like these hyperscalers are so dedicated to getting energy right now that they would burn whale oil if they had to, because they just need energy and they'll just take it from wherever they can because it's such a race to get to the next order of magnitude.
Yeah, we were talking about coal. You're not a serious AI founder if you're not like thinking about spinning up coal,
natural gas,
all this stuff, but whale blubber is the next frontier.
Yeah.
And NVIDIA's looking into this.
Yeah. That unlocks the next scaling tier for sure.
Blubber.ai.
Blubber.ai. Okay, let's go to Bryce. He quote tweets David Phillips saying, "Vacation for founders don't fix burnout. Address what's wrong. You'll feel better." And Bryce says, "You cannot vacation your way out of burnout." We already talked about this a little bit in the Q&A.
Talked about
it's
this.
True. Vacations, I don't know.
Burnout.
Not a fan.
Burnout is a symptom that what you're working on is not working.
Yeah.
Like it's rare, or you're having like massive people issues.
Yeah.
Right?
I mean,
like
Josh Koppelman here, you can't even sabbatical your way out of it. Like, you have to be working on something that's more ikigai, more life's work, more
life's
perpetual.
work, but also a lot of people are perfectly happy building a SaaS company, even if it's not their life's work.
Okay. Then do they get burned out or not?
If customers love the product,
sure,
they're growing month over month, and they have a great team around them, right? Because winning feels good. It's when you're not winning and you know you're not winning and you're just like you're like chewing glass, chewing 10 different types of glass.
Yeah.
and you know it, but your burnout usually comes from knowing you're in a bad situation and not doing anything about it.
Yeah. I wonder if you looked at like the cases of burnout, how many examples can you find of someone burning out when growth rates are at all-time highs?
Yeah, I think
it seems like it's very rare.
I think you get strung out.
Sure.
But that's very different
Exhausted,
than burnout.
but not burnout.
Yeah.
Burnout's where I was used to 200% growth. It's now at 30%. And it takes me 10 times as long to get
burnout. Yeah. Burnout's like losing conviction in what you're doing, or again, like if customers are churning nonstop and you're not doing something to fix that, then you're going to get burnt out.
I think the answer is just to, change what you're doing. Change like your main, if you're a meetings guy, switch to something else. If you're doing email constantly, switch to something else. Like jar yourself out of your pattern.
Yeah, but all of those are like more like exhaustion, which I think is different than burnout.
Okay. So how do you fix burnout? What's the top way?
Burnout comes when you're not delivering for shareholders.
So the short answer is like start
your
delivering,
investors,
I guess.
Yeah, start delivering. No, it really is like a fundamental like
reframe on that.
Yeah, like I'd love
and it's going to be different for every business.
Yeah.
Okay.
Burnout, and again, like this is not when a founder that's building a wonderful B2B SaaS company and they go do ayahuasca and then they come back and they're like, well, I don't want to work on this anymore. That's not burnout. That's mental illness.
Yep. Yeah,
self-induced mental illness.
Yeah. Let's go to Delian. Delian says, in January of 2020, I decided to wear a MAGA hat in San Francisco every day for the full month. I remember him wearing it once. I didn't realize he did it every day.
Walking to every meeting.
I felt that the country and my tech peers did not appreciate how the MAGA hat was a symbol of hope for the average working American, not a symbol of hate. 5 years later, I rest my case. Fascinating. I mean, I remember the backlash to this was intense. Like a lot of people were really, really upset about this. And what's interesting is that it was in some ways more controversial than Peter donating to Trump and speaking at the convention, because the hat was more visceral of a symbol, and it had been so controversial. But wow, what an arc to come back from. Fascinating.
Yeah, the whole Delian should frame this.
Seriously.
And they should put it in the Founders Fund office purely as being willing to look stupid or
Brother
silly.
Of the Week candidate there.
Brother of the Week candidate for sure. He deserves a plaque for that. Because the hate was very real. I guarantee you he had thousands of messages being like, you're an idiot.
And I don't even think he had that many supporters. It wasn't as
no,
like, it was still very contrarian. This year is very consensus, where if you came out, if you were just some random VC or founder, which Delian kind of was at the time in 2020, I don't think he was a partner yet. And, if you did that this cycle in 2024, you would immediately get like a quote tweet from like Elon and David Sachs being like, this is incredible. Welcome to the club. Like you're some like, it was a way to actually climb the status ranks in tech, which made it a little bit more mimetic, a little bit less contrarian, but it was a lot less risky.
The least heretical people at Hereticon were wearing MAGA hats.
Yeah. And Delian wasn't. He was wearing a red hat, but it was Make Founders Fund great again and to play on it, kind of
there was always
grab
like
someone's eye.
A fresh MAGA hat.
Exactly.
Clearly somebody like packed it up, put it in their bag, brought it to Hereticon, snuck it into Faena, put it on, and then like took it off on the way out.
Yeah. But it really is fascinating that position became basically consensus in tech. I was talking to somebody who was like, it was saying like, I cannot believe, this is somebody at FF who lived through the 2016 Teal stuff, which was like, I mean, there were protesters outside of his house. It was insane. So many hit pieces. And he was just saying, like, I cannot believe, this was in the summer when everyone was like pro-Trump before Biden dropped out and Kamala wasn't even like an idea yet. He's like, I cannot believe that Donald Trump is the current thing. And he really was. He became the current thing. It became like, everyone just needs to be like, rah, rah, rah. It's wild. So
Speaking of contrarians.
Speaking of contrarians, Gautier, I know how to pronounce his name right now. Gautier says, Jarvis, buy $42 billion more Bitcoin. And it's Michael Saylor in the Iron Man helmet, just so vindicated. This guy was seen as such a joke for so long. And now went on all, like, most of my memories of him are on these major trad media TV shows, just being like, yes, I bought 42
$42 million
I don't
dollars
know
worth of
quite
Bitcoin.
that much, but
Yeah,
a lot.
No, but I mean, he's
mega
like,
long.
he did something that he wasn't saying publicly, because I don't think he could have.
Yeah.
But it was a way that you could buy exposure to Bitcoin without buying Bitcoin in the public.
It's so odd because there's MicroStrategy, his company, which I think essentially trades at the book value of the Bitcoin. Essentially, if Bitcoin goes up 10%, his stock is up 10%. I don't think they do a lot of other business
Things
now.
anymore.
I think it's mostly just a Bitcoin holding company. But then there's also the Bitcoin ETF, Grayscale, and a bunch of others. BlackRock has one. And then there's also, you could go and buy synthetic Bitcoin on Robinhood, or you could buy real Bitcoin on Coinbase, or you could self-custody. And there's this wild gradient of like ways to get exposure to Bitcoin. But I think all of that has been a big piece of what's driven the bull run, is just more and more people can
but a good example of like, he looked like an idiot for a long time and has been vindicated.
For real.
Hats off.
For real. Okay, back to Nate O'Brien. He says, one of the greatest threats to an entrepreneur is when they find themselves in the $5 to $10 million range of liquid assets. You lose your hunger. You get comfortable. It's a dangerous spot to be in.
So here's what I would do.
And I was getting lever up.
Yeah, lever up.
Lever up.
No, I mean, if I was, risk it all so that you feel like you got to.
Step one is always lever up.
Yeah. Start trading options like aggressively.
But
no,
I think
there
is
advice,
something to levering up, where if you have 5 to 10 million, like you could go and buy $100 million business. You could, and then you could just be the owner operator of a pretty large business, and maybe that's great. Maybe you take that to $1 billion. Maybe that's how you get there. As opposed to, I think what he's worried about is like, you buy a house and you wind up with all these costs, and you're just like, oh yeah, like my life now just costs $1 million a year, and so I'm not really growing or trying anything bold.
Yeah, if I had a founder that pitched me for their seed stage company, and they were like, I've got about 10 million liquid, I would invest, but I'd encourage them to give it away first, because they're just not going to have that. Like
the grind.
They're not going to have that grind set. No, the another counterpoint, because I think that Nate is right, but the other point of view here is that I've seen founders that already have a certain amount of wealth be able to work on something for a long time and stay convicted in it without sort of worrying, because they're not like this sort of like, they're not operating from fear. They're operating purely from winning. And the example is, I think YC did an analysis on their portfolio, and they found that founders that came from money had a higher likelihood of success, which you could attribute to, their parents had connections and provided capital and resources and advice. But it also is that they just were, it's more in the state of, when you have 10-ish million liquid, you're kind of in the state of play where the stakes are lower, right? Where you're just like, I'm just building this to win. I'm not doing it because I need it to, pay my mortgage, or I need it so that I can put my kids through college or whatever. So I actually think it can be, he's right that it could decrease somebody's ability to really like grind, but it also could open them up to be like, all I care about is winning. I'm going to win at all costs. I'm going to be willing to look stupid for some amount of time. So I think it can be a tool.
Yep. I like that. Your buddy Dylan says, posts a screenshot. Netflix finally gives up on interactive shows, pivots to Gen AI for games. And Dylan says, Netflix is ending its interactive experiment, but I still believe the future of TV lies in content that you can engage with. We've seen it with HQ, Trivia, Bandersnatch, and to a certain extent, Crypto the Game. I think that was his company, right?
Yep.
Someone will do it at scale. My guess, live on-screen betting while watching sports.
Yeah.
Ooh, I like that.
Yeah.
That's good.
Anyway, so Dylan helped build HQ Trivia into a monster.
Yep.
Then I think he was at, where was he at? He was at not Uber Eats, but he was at the one in LA, Bastion's company.
Oh, yeah. Postmates.
And then after we had started doing some party round drops and getting some attention, he DM'd me and he was like, this looks like as fun as it was at HQ. Ends up joining the team.
Yep.
And then after party round, he ended up starting this interactive on-chain crypto game that went super viral, and he didn't raise any money. Within 6 months, sold it to Uniswap. So he's over at Uniswap now, but super smart around media. And honestly, like, it's kind of insane that there hasn't been an HQ, like a phenomena like HQ that's since HQ, right? You can't really think of
Clubhouse a little bit.
Clubhouse, but that was like that was social media.
Yep.
HQ is entertainment.
Entertainment game.
And it was something that even your mom or your aunt or your uncle or whatever would be messaging you about and playing, and it was like really in the zeitgeist.
Should we talk about Bet on Love, or is that too much alpha?
Yeah. I think I brought it. I brought it up to Dylan because I was like, you should do this.
So Jordy and I had an idea. So Dylan's betting on the winner in this interactive entertainment at scale being live on-screen betting while watching sports, which is already kind of happening with second screening, where you're watching a football game and you're on DraftKings or whatever the other one is to bet on the game while you're watching. But we Jordy and I were talking about how way underrated is maybe betting on something like The Bachelor.
Yeah,
because there's a huge audience there. No one's really modernized that format. Like the classic game show has been kind of revitalized by Mr. Beast. But if you could have a dating show where you can bet on who's going to win, and it's all done via Polymarket or something.
Not who's going to win. I want bets, multiple opportunities to bet every single episode.
Who's going to get voted off this episode, right? Yeah. Who's going to get the first kiss, or who's going to get the rose, or whatever whatever happens. I think that'd just be a very interesting, very different format. And maybe there's a money component. Maybe it's just like long term there probably is like a financial betting, but even just more audience participation, more interaction, that feels like the way things are going.
If there's one thing it's Americans love, one thing that's truly American is speculation, right? Even coming to this country hundreds of years ago was speculation in itself. So it's core to our culture.
The gold
rush.
If
you're an entrepreneur that wants to build at the intersection of entertainment and speculation, make a reality TV show that you can bet on.
I love it. Let's go to Sarah Hess. She says, startups at the Pentagon. I built a quantum AI autonomous drone. The Pentagon. Cool. Can it run on Windows XP and fit on a floppy disk?
Yeah, this is Sarah's very sharp around this stuff, and I think more plugged into the defense world, like actually plugged in, not just from a venture capital standpoint.
Yeah, she worked in the I think CIA.
Now an investor, classic pipeline, CIA to venture capital.
Many such cases.
You have to keep climbing the mountain.
The question I have about this is like, should we be putting this on the government, or should we be putting this on fucking Microsoft? Like Microsoft, like go in and pro bono get the government on the latest and greatest software. Like just do whatever that work is instead of just continuing to charge XP licenses. Like you have some sort of like moral duty. This is your way that you can give back, even bigger than your ESG commitments. Just commit to. I mean, we joke about the ramp, thing, like the government should run on ramp, but like maybe it actually should. And maybe that should be a lower margin piece of Ramp's business. But it's how they actually wind up having a lot of impact. And same thing with Microsoft. Like, get them off XP. Like just go and do the work. You have the engineers. You have 1 million engineers. Like go deploy them, forward deploy them, and get the government on the latest and greatest.
Yeah, but Palantir, Anduril have done a ton of heavy lifting for all the startups now building in those categories because they've gotten the government on board with a lot of new technologies and done a lot of that heavy lifting. And the way they get paid back for it is the companies that don't quite make it but build some great technology will eventually get absorbed by Palantir and Anduril, and then they get the benefit of all of that sort of capex and investment in technology. By other VCs.
Palantir's now, they have the AIP program. Have you seen this? Where startups can build on top of the Palantir platform. So if you're building SaaS, and there's going to be some really cool news about that. I was talking to the team, so we'll cover that later this week when it goes live. But really, really bullish on that. I love the idea of Palantir being like this data layer that then other companies can come in and build stuff on, because there's just so many. Like you talk to people who work for the government during like the Palantir story, and a lot of them are like, oh yeah, like I always like loved the idea of Palantir, but like my unit never got access to it. I actually never interacted with Palantir while I was at NSA or CIA or DoD or whatever, and that shouldn't be the case. The case is probably just that Palantir doesn't have the bandwidth to build procurement and the reason, all these different things. But like if you can create that abstraction layer and be like the Windows XP essentially, like that's really valuable.
Yeah, the market is clearly repricing Palantir right now.
Oh yeah, they just flipped.
They just flipped Lockheed Martin, which is crazy. But one reason for that is that they could effectively own the app store for the DoD, right, or the Pentagon, or the USG, right, where
hugely valuable.
Hey, if you want to build software and hardware and other products for the government, you need to build on Palantir.
And long term, that's kind of the Anduril thesis as well with the Lattice software.
Totally,
it's like everything that's equipment based will interface with this one thing, and you could see them opening that up at some point to a cruise missile or some other company where maybe they acquire it, maybe they partner with it, but like there's some interaction. I was talking to the Anduril guys about the technology that is used for communication systems, and they were just griping about like it makes like HTTP look like rocket science. Like it's like insane how legacy these things are, just to like set up a communication line to like
get everybody
like a green light on like, is the F-35 still in the sky? Like that interaction is just like the most like outdated system built in the 70s and just maintained.
Yeah.
So yeah, Jacob Hellberg writes, let that sink in. Palantir just flipped Lockheed Martin. And it's funny because just like a week ago, I posted a screenshot that Sham Sankar, the CTO at Palantir, created for his website about AIP and his Second Breakfast initiative. And it was the defense tech companies like Palantir relative to Lockheed based on employees and market cap.
Yeah.
And Palantir was like kind of middle of the pack, but when you looked at market cap to employees, Palantir is like a few thousand, and the other primes have like tens of thousands or hundreds of thousands. And so it was impressive then, but now it's just going to be like Palantir's at the top. They have the most market cap and the least employees. And like every metric is just the best. It's like total power law winner. And just really, really remarkable story. I mean, like long grind. Like there was a time when Palantir was, I think, like kind of hanging out in like the single digit to 10, 20 billion range for like a decade. Because they grew and they got through like the VC
everybody's saying,
thing.
oh, it's just consulting.
Yeah, just consulting. There's no real platform play there. And then
Yeah.
the AI stuff happens and they actually have everything in.
Yeah.
And the other companies just can't compete because like they did the hard work first.
Yeah.
So yeah, super valuable. Congrats to everyone at Palantir.
And the culture there
it's
from
still
everything
good.
I've heard is ridiculous.
It's crazy.
Right?
I mean, we saw Eunice talking about like, no kipping pull-ups. Like that, how do you keep that going 20 years in? That's crazy. You would think they would have evolved just to like a normie tech company.
Yeah. And all the engineers that historically would have gone to Google and then just decided when Google, with Project Maven, right, decided to say like, we don't want this a part of our platform, create an opportunity for Palantir to hover up all those people that clearly care about the country and are patriots, want to put their skills to use.
Oh, this is a rough one. This might be the anti-brother of the week, a wag of the finger to Jensen Huang, the founder and CEO of NVIDIA. He says he doesn't wear a watch. And he has a very, this is a 37-second clip from a interview that he did where he explains that he, the most important time is right now. And so he doesn't need to wear a watch, but he's missing a critical thing, which is that a watch doesn't tell you the time of day. It tells you the time of your life. Right. It tells you where you are, not in the day,
and it tells other people where you are in your life.
Exactly. And so I think we gotta get this guy a hitter.
Yeah,
I think that's.
You were talking about how Putin, whenever he does an interview, he places his watch on the table as a way to signal to the world what kind of man he is. If you weren't familiar with Putin, you're going to see his watch and start to get an idea of who he is just by his timepiece.
I want to read more into that because I wonder if it's like almost like a threatening thing. He's like taking, you take your watch off before you get in a fist fight.
Yeah.
And so he's taking his watch off to put it down to like be like, if this interview doesn't go well, like I'm ready to fight almost. Yeah. There's like a million things.
But it's also a status thing, right?
It is.
He's probably got one of the better watch collections. I think it might be the kind of thing in Russia where you want to have a nice watch collection if you're an oligarch, but you don't want to ever have it be nicer than the top dog, right?
Sure. Someone who can challenge you.
Yeah. Maybe. You don't want to challenge Putin's collection.
But you would think that, I mean, I feel like Jensen's like, a hair's breadth away from becoming a watch guy. Like so much of what NVIDIA does. Yeah. So much of what NVIDIA does is precision manufacturing. And he should be able to respect
they've
the
learned
work
a lot from
of a Vacheron, the work of a Patek, the work of a AP. Like he should be able to get into that. We saw Zuck did briefly and developed a great, a wonderful
I'd like to see a
collection.
one of one NVIDIA GPU watch that you can see the intricate detail of the GPU.
That'd be amazing.
Humming.
We got to get that made, and then we'll send it to him, and then he'll come on the show.
Yeah.
Also, I mean, he's famous for doing that jersey swap with Zuck. Do you remember that? Where Zuck was wearing some sort of like mountaineering coat, almost like very like puffy, and Jensen was wearing the iconic leather jacket, and they swapped jackets and took a picture. It was a jersey swap. Fantastic. I mean, swapping watches, that would be very cool too. There's something there, but we'll get him soon. You can be redeemed, Jensen. It's within your abilities. I believe in you. It's never too late. So David Boskovic says, I woke up in a cold sweat last night from a nightmare. I had spent all of our money on Google Ads in one day because I had accidentally removed the limit on my Tri-Ramp card. Someone should figure out how to sell brand placement in dreams like this. It's a new frontier.
Yeah, so I would wear one of those. I would wear like an AI. I'd wear a wearable if it was going to project ads into my brain.
Yes.
So
you can make more educated purchasing decisions.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, I'm as a student, as a businessman, as a student of capitalism, I learn a lot from ads. I learn what's selling, what's not. I learn about my own taste. I learn about what I want to purchase. I learn about products and services I can buy to help grow Technology Brothers, right? And so if I could sit down right before bed and put on my little wearable and have it be projecting ads into my dreams, I would pay for that, right? It's that's why I pay for X, and the only downside of X Premium is it actually shows less ads, right?
Yeah, exactly.
Which is a big bummer, but
yeah, I can relate to that nightmare. And the Ramp team says, our team is working hard to ensure your policy guardrails stay in place in your dreams.
There you go.
They hired a good person to run their social media. I'm proud of them. Say Taylor says, you're not online enough. Couldn't have said it better myself.
Simple. Yeah, I mean, part of our work here at Technology Brothers is to be almost like a brain rot shield for our audience.
Yes.
So if you're worried about spending too much time in the timeline, we basically are a layer over the timeline to help surface the most relevant content and then provide hard-hitting analysis on it. But
it doesn't always have to be that way. It can also be you're online for 6 hours. You have an extra 3 hours at the end of the day. Throw on Technology Brothers. You get another 3 hours of content.
Well, here's the thing. Sometimes a founder will call me and they say like, hey, I'm having a rough day. This customer integration isn't going well. Or I'm having this issue with my head of engineering, whatever it is. And almost always I tell them, drink 2 Celsius, have some Lucy or Excel, and go sit outside, ideally in the sun if it's daytime, and just scroll. Like give yourself a couple hours to scroll and just don't stop, right? I think all the feeds have gotten to the point where you're never really going to hit the end. I remember that was like a 2010s era social thing where it'd be like, you've reached all the content, right? But I haven't hit the end in a decade almost, right? Impossible. And so go outside, get some sun, caffeine, nicotine, and just scroll a little bit. And I promise you, like that sort of creative juices will start flowing. You'll start getting into this sort of problem-solving mentality, and you'll make your life better. So,
couldn't agree more. Andrew Editor says, first impression of my Daylight Co. The hype is justified. Shockingly responsive, distractions non-existent. Decent chance this becomes my primary work computer. Oh, this is the high refresh rate e-ink screen. Tablet. I saw this. Andrew, good buddy, and was on my team at Party Round. Phenomenal writer, and works with a bunch of other startups now. So his primary work is meeting with companies that he works with through his agency, Words, WordSSS.com. Sure. So he's primarily interfacing with clients and writing, and so Daylight Computers is a really good product for that because it's a product that
is trying to take all the advancements in computer technology that we have today, but sort of like make it more analog. So they eliminate color. They make it basically less engaging overall, so that in theory it helps you actually get more work done.
And this is live. Like you can just go buy one of these.
Yeah,
now?
so they've been working. I don't have mine yet, but they don't. They're working through like pre-order lists, but they are delivering now. I use the product.
It could never replace like this
physical
paper, but I mean for
that's
other
what they're
stuff.
trying to do. They're trying to take out big paper.
Good luck.
Good luck.
Good
There's
luck.
a lot of but yeah, I use the product
better chance taking down Apple on the iPad, but you're never taking this. For
This,
my cold dead hands.
Yeah.
Will you take my
We'll
stack
cut
of
down the
printed
trees
out tweets?
ourselves if we have to. But no, I tried the daylight for the first time. I think it was over like 6 or 7 months ago.
Yeah.
And this is one of those things, like a lot of the cool trends in technology now are sort of making stuff more analog, more retro. Mod retro is an example, which is
and
more
I like
nostalgic.
This stuff. Like, who knows if daylight is like going to be as big as Apple, but I'm so happy that it exists, and I want it to be a great company, and I think it would probably be a fantastic
that was the
investment. People can make money.
That was the investment. Anjan, the founder, when I was talking to him, I kind of almost laughed when he told me the valuation.
Yeah.
But then he basically was like, look, like if we can if we can sell millions of devices, like this is going to be really cheap.
Yeah.
Right. And I think that with the sort of anti-blue light movement, some other stuff like that, it has massive potential. So
yeah, that's great.
Shout out to Andrew and Anjan.
That's awesome. Let's go to Steven Simoni. Says cheap drones aren't going out of style anytime soon. Thanks Wired for covering Allen Control Systems. And Wired writes the AI machine gun of the future is already here, and it's some sort of machine gun mounted on the back of a truck.
Yeah, so
you know this company pretty well.
Yeah, so I'm an advisor to ACS. David Sachs, famous political podcaster, actually was I think their first investor because he backed Steve's last company, I think it was. But yeah, Steve has been for the last like year and a half, 2 years building anti-drone gun turrets. So one of the big problems in modern warfare is you have this proliferation of really cheap drones that can just fly across the battlefield and just and so they're very difficult to take out as a human because you're sort of aiming a gun. Shotguns aren't long enough range. Rifles is just too hard to hit things, and so ACS has built this phenomenal product that can take out drones fully autonomously. So this is Terminator. Terminator's here. It's mounted to the back of a Toyota pickup truck in Texas right now on the testing grounds, and they've just made some like really incredible progress over the last year, all the way to. There's some cool videos out there. They're public now, but you can see the ACS gun turret like taking out drones, taking out bunch of Chinese drones, which is cool, using them as target practice. They did a demo day recently for a number of investors, and I was joking with Steve about it's pretty funny to think about like 5 VCs seeing the same awesome demo at the same time and like looking around being like, all right, like it's mono y mono now.
Yeah, who's gonna
sharp elbows.
I mean, it's
so
good
anyway,
that they got
Steve
Wired
is,
to cover
Steve
it.
is so yeah. I mean, Steve is I think he's the going to be look back as the TK of defense. Like he's like one of one individual and built a ridiculous team and on a mission. So
that's awesome.
Thank you to Steve for keeping us safe.
Yeah, let's go to Zach. It says gamer is up next as a word to describe the obsessed. Notice a lot with runners, athletes who compete hard and smart. Gamers. I like that.
So
there's a lot of gamer lingo that Gen Z is adopting.
Yeah.
Like I'm one shot or like
one-shotted.
Yeah. One-shotting is that concept taken out.
Yeah. I think we need to. So a gamer, it's going to take me a little bit to work it in.
Yeah, it's tough.
Understanding the definition, I identify. I'm a bit of a gamer. You're a gamer. Our VP Ben's a gamer.
Yep.
But yeah, I want to bring the 360 no scope into the lingo.
Yeah,
so
what
like
does
if
that mean in a business context?
So if somebody like posts a banger tweet,
Yep.
and then somebody in the comments section replies, I'm going to sign up for your product right now and use it. That's almost like a 360 no scope, because a good post is this sort of like elegant thing that's hard to do. You're doing a lot at once.
Are you familiar with the term pre-made?
No.
So if you go on like Counter-Strike or Call of Duty and you're playing like the competitive modes like 5v5, 6v6, normally you just get matched with random people. So it's very hard to coordinate because like who's the sniper, who's the machine gunner or medic or whatever. But the way to really win is to make a quote unquote pre-made where you and your boys all are in the lobby beforehand, and so you show up, it's you and everyone knows like, okay, I'm going to go left, you're going to go right, and we're really good on the comms and we know not to fight and talk over each other, and you're going up against randoms. So if you have a pre-made, you're locked in.
You're going to smoke
and
people.
when I think about the teams that show up with startups like
and raise 50 million.
like Anduril, very much a pre-made in the sense that you have Palmer, but then you also have like 3 Palantir executives. It's like, how is that not going to be success? They really stack the deck in their favor, right? So
I'd
launching
like to
a company
see,
as a pre-made, that's
I'd like
valuable.
to see company X accounts like start to use GG. So
GG.
Like
Palmer
when Ramp launches a bunch of new functionality, I want to see Brex just reply to it and say GG.
GG, well played.
GG, well played.
Or
and then they just delete their account.
Good luck, have fun, GLHF. I mean, there's so much gamer lingo we can bring over, and it's again, it's like a way to signal like in-group, so very valuable. Sam Gerstenzang says, wow, A16Z is hiring a full-time person just to keep track of carry, and it's a job for their internal HR team.
So this is awesome because it shows the evolution of venture capital, right? It's becoming mainstream. It's learning everything that traditional private equity learned in the 90s. We're just relearning it, just like cryptos, like speed running, like financial regulation. So anyways, bullish for Andreessen. I can't wait for them to go public, so that everybody can own a piece of that monster. And to me, the signal is like we're getting ready to go public, right? Like it's one thing when it's just the GPs and they're sort of managing carry internally.
They have a CFO. They must, right?
I'm sure they do.
They must have a huge finance team.
Any multi-billion-dollar AUM fund without a CFO would be concerning.
Yeah, but like it's interesting that we don't know their CFO. Like we know some of their comms people. Like Margaret.
Because that's what I'm ready
right?
for. I'm ready for Andreessen earnings calls with the CFO.
Fantastic.
That's gonna be. We're gonna have to do a live stream for that.
Fantastic. I guess the question is, will the other funds go short? Sequoia, they're set up to take long and short positions in the public markets. What if they're like, we
open a big short position?
We're shorting Andreessen
just to try to attack the brand.
Exactly. Like Hindenburg research from a Sequoia on Andreessen be devastating.
Sean would do that.
The VC infighting.
Dark Sean would do that.
Dark Sequoia. Love Sean. I think he's in the stack somewhere. Kate Clark tweets some personal news. Bloomberg hires Clark to cover VC and startups. So she was at the Information.
So this is why right now, the technology publications, you got TMZ, the Information, you've got Newcomer, Next Generation.
They should have like a fantasy sports for tech journalism where you could like build your team and see who's getting the most views.
Where's the Polymarket?
Yeah, Polymarket on the trades, and then there should definitely be like a draft day where you get the best posters and the Information, Bloomberg, Forbes. They all have to, they get rankings based on, they didn't get that many views last year. They're at the top of the ranking. They get to pick the best posters. Right. So there should be a draft day. There should be fantasy. You should be able to build a team and ultimately bet on this. You should be able to gamble on it.
Yeah, and you see Kara Swisher has had a very antagonistic relationship with the technology industry, and I think one of the reasons is she watched all of her peers at the time become wealthy. And so this competition within different media companies for tech journalists is actually good. They're all going to make more money. I think I saw Newcomers paying like $350K to hire journalists. I would expect Kate Clark is this. I would expect this is like a seven-figure contract over 4 years. It's not NBA money yet.
But I mean, pretty soon we're going to start seeing the 360 deals, the sponsorships. Like what kind of jersey are they wearing if they go to a conference? If they're going to be on Emily Chang's The Circuit, throw some logos on that shirt or that blouse.
But I think journalists have. We think of these media companies as these sort of big brands that carry a lot of weight. But like it's Bloomberg.
Yeah,
right?
Bloomberg got her.
Bloomberg is going to become much more relevant because Kate actually gets scoops. And
She does. She's very good.
She like is not just like using ChatGPT to summarize what someone else talked about online.
No, she trades information. Yeah, I'm excited for the shoe deals. I want to see like Laurel Piana or something. Be like, oh yeah, we got an exclusive deal with this person. When you see them on CNBC giving some Squawk Box, like oh yeah, they're repping our gear.
Yeah,
be great. Ayush writes, new founder KPI dropped testosterone level. The average YC founder seed stage is 344 nanograms per deciliter. Yours truly 727 nanograms per deciliter. And did you see this underlying study? I know the guy who did it.
Yeah.
I think his name is Michael. Not
so that's
good.
That's
really
good.
low.
Yeah, I think
really
so.
Low.
Here's what we got to look into. One, not surprised that Ayush has such high T. It's probably why he's had a little bit of controversies. But like the guy's online constantly. He's grinding. His entire team is grinding. He's like extremely smart and very just like hardworking, and that's probably because where his T levels are at. But we got to go to Y-Combinator, do some investigative journalism ourselves, because I would guess that they're handing out a little bit too much plastic bottled water, because how else can you explain it's 330 average? That's the positive thing, though, is that
those YC dinners should just be T-bone steaks.
Yeah.
Exclusively.
No water.
No water.
Even though water's Lindy.
Yeah.
But yeah. The positive thing from that study, though, is that it seemed like the more venture capital the founders raised, the higher their T levels were.
Yes.
And so I think that's a positive trend, which tells me Y-Combinator should just invest more money in, because it actually could be that more venture capital is actually just pulling up their testosterone levels. So they have so many unicorns in a batch, they should probably just start like investing real size, make the entry check $10 million.
Yeah. I mean, there's a million ways to upregulate T, and they got to make the new trend. It's not the Allbirds, I'll tell you that. Justine Moore at Venture Twins says, new A16Z investment thesis, AI X parenting. Raising kids is one of our most challenging and important jobs. Every parent needs support sometimes, but many can't access it because it's too expensive or inaccessible. AI changes this, what we're seeing. And then there's a market map.
Okay, so two reasons that I think this is smart. One, audio is a fantastic interface for kids.
Yep.
Because parents don't want their kids on screens.
Yep.
I got this thing for my son called a Yoto.
I have one. I set one up
yesterday. It's honestly, my son locks in.
Yeah.
Like
he puts on something and then he goes and reads books and stuff and just plays with Legos. And he has all these custom cards. You can download any music and put it on a custom card.
It's so great. Good. It's so great. So anyways, for parents, like even 20 minutes of time where their kid is doing something solo is like massively valuable. So parents will spend a lot of money for something like this.
Yep.
In general, parents will pay for anything educational pretty quickly for their kids.
Yep.
And then the other thing is like audio to date has not been the best interface for adults because we're ADHD. We have like, we need things that are kind of like moving faster than audio typically provides.
Yep.
But for kids, it's just absolutely fantastic. And so what I've wanted to see is something like what Avi's doing for Friend, but for kids, because if you give kids this digital companion that has certain guardrails that can talk with them, that can teach them things that they can ask questions to. I would love to back a company that's doing that specifically. I think there's been some toy companies that are integrating LLMs, which is cool. But like a little pendant type thing that has a speaker on it that
or
they
even
can
just
talk
a robot
to.
dog that follows you around, but you can also ask it like, what's that
Unitree Robotics or Boston Dynamics.
Like
I want a robot dog that I can strap an AR to that has a speaker, a Polycom attached to it, so I can talk to my kid.
Protect
and the dog family. Just protects the kid and hangs out. It's their best friend, man's best friend.
It's great.
It's got an AR on it.
I love it. That's great.
Anyway, so
let's go to Andrea D. Huberwoman, PhD. She says, YC should add some cute ladies to the workplace, purely for the sake of their founders' low T levels, of course. We're back on T levels at YC.
Back on T levels at YC.
This is funny because Y-Combinator has been criticized a lot for not having enough women in the cohorts. But maybe this is like now a right-wing critique of the lack of feminine energy at YC.
Yeah,
it's the same criticism,
I
but
genuinely
from a different angle.
So the issue is YC is fully remote now.
Oh no, I think they went back in person.
Really?
Yeah,
They're back in person. Okay,
that was just
okay.
during the COVID years.
Oh, but do they actually have like
You can't work
off?
from there every day.
Yeah,
but you can go in for dinners and
okay.
office hours.
So yeah, I think this is probably what they're dealing with is not just like a small issue, like it's an epidemic, right? I would imagine that some founders are going to start not applying for YC because they have high T, and they don't want to be around men with low T because it's just a drag, right? And 2, they're worried if they join, their T is going to drop dramatically.
Sure. Or that they'll
and
be
so they need to
low
not.
T.
It's not like adding secretaries is one approach, removing plastic bottled water is another. But they need to try like 20 things at once and see what sticks, because it's gonna. That is, YC is one of the greatest institutions to be created within Silicon Valley in the last, whatever is it, it's almost 20 or 20-ish years now. They got to save, and I think Gary will get on it.
Do you know this Congressman Waltz? Do you know this guy? I feel like we had him in here previously. This is funny because it's like a very Twitter native format, but it's from an official congressman's press Twitter. And so it says, Waltz, how much do you think the Air Force pays for this bag of bushings? USAF Secretary Kendall. I don't know, Congressman. Waltz says $90,000. So we've run into these again and again. There's just so many things.
First, it was soap dispensers that Exits called out.
Yep.
Now it's bushings.
Yep. But it's also the seatbelts on the planes, the urinals, all these different things. They're all way.
And this
way
is why
overpriced.
Kimia's company is going to rip, is because we're going to introduce competition into the bushings market.
Yeah. But look at this. I mean, he has one clip essentially from C-SPAN. It's a 1-minute clip and it has 2 million views. Like what? This is just the poster native congressman or politician just going direct and using the correct format and not just saying, "Hey, I put out a press release. Go to this link." It's like I'm articulating the problem and I'm showing you evidence that I'm trying to do something about it.
He just mogged the Air Force
secretary. Yeah, it's wild. Hopefully it comes down. Need commercial off the shelf. COTS versus GOTS, baby.
COTS versus GOTS.
Let's go. Oh, here's Sean. This is a great one. So Elon Musk, on the election night, I believe, says all-time high usage of this platform. And it looks like global user seconds was over 400 billion on the election night. And Sean says, we at Sequoia invested $800 million into the X take private. We were ridiculed for 2 years for it, but I'm confident we'll get the last laugh. Never bet against Elon.
Yep. And
he was getting dunked on a little bit about this because, like, I guess the stock is down in like private markets, but I think he's right. I think never bet against Elon. I think Elon Inc.
and they're
Elon
investing on
companies are valuable.
They're a venture capital firm. They care about. Yeah, Sean cares about what the position is going to look like in 10 years,
and it's
right
a
now
network effects company.
Yeah, and right now there's so much momentum. that I would be willing to bet my house that they'll make money on this investment in 10 years.
It's almost like there's a refounding of the company over there, because I remember when
this
happened,
that was why we talked about the rebrand going.
The rebrand was refounding, and it's actually like they're going through the whole cycle that Twitter went through again, but with just like a completely new open book for monetization. And because when Elon bought it, I was like, there's a lot of people that are like leaving, but this makes me more bullish than ever on this is the best place to be if you're in tech.
Yeah, let's go check in with all the journalists that posted their Blue Sky links.
Yeah, it's fine. They might be doing well over there. I know that the numbers on Threads are fine, but it's not the most important place to be if you're in tech. Yeah. And tech is always ahead of everything else. And so over time, we'll go through the same cycle.
Dan Loeb is not on Threads ratioing people twice a day.
No.
Right?
And so as long as like the most high signal, most valuable alpha is there, they can kind of climb up the ranking again of like everyone has to be on there because that's where the conversation is happening.
Yeah, and the ads
and who
the
knows
ads
how
platform will get
all sorts of different things, but they're getting more money for sure.
Yeah.
Like
they're
and
especially Mark was tweeting out, basically calling out all the advertisers that sort of worked collectively to boycott X, and basically saying that I think a lot of those advertisers will start to come back because they realize that what they're doing is not only sort of short-sighted, but potentially even illegal.
Yeah. And yeah, it's interesting because the cost base for X has gotten so low that if they can get the revenue side anywhere near back to what it was,
yeah, it'll just be super
it is
profitable.
a $45 billion company.
Yeah.
Like they could be doing
especially with
$5
the
billion in
network
EBITDA
effects.
and trade at 20x or something, 10x.
Yeah.
Like that's not that crazy to imagine.
Yeah. One of my former employees, close friend, just had a bunch of different offers from every sort of like Mag 7 type company, and he chose
I know a lot
X.
of people like that. All the best
and
people are
so
going
the
there.
The reason to be bullish, besides the fact that Sean is bullish, is that and the whole election and everything like that, is the talent. The talent magnet is real. The smartest people that aspire, that want to work under a leader like Elon are going there.
Let's go to Shiel Monat says, a lot of fintech shitcos that went public in the ZERP era and were completely left for dead are quietly having monster years, many up 600%. And he cites Dave Inc., which is up 600%.
Neobank.
Root Inc., Clover Health Investments Corp., and Blend Labs. I actually know the founder of Dave. And yeah, rough go of it when they SPAC'd, and it went way down.
And SoFi is ripping as well.
Yeah. It's amazing. I'm really happy for these folks that SPAC'd at the wrong time and just had like a rough go but stuck with it. That's a great.
It'll be interesting to see if SoFi ends up finding its way, and then Chamath will be able to say like, look, if you just invested in all my SPACs, like,
I did well on average.
You did well. You did well, right?
Yeah. I talked to somebody who SPAC'd and said that like he did it post ZERP, but what he did was on day one, he immediately unlocked all the investors, and the founders had like a 3-year lockup. And so that created like a ton of downward pressure on the stock immediately.
But got it out of the way.
But got it out of the way. And there was never this like, weight hanging over the company. And they were able to essentially tell their VCs like, hey, we got your return. You can distribute, and your LPs can sell today if they want.
Yeah.
You are like, we're clean of this, and we're into the next phase. And it's like, now we got to build up as a public company. And a lot of these companies, it's like, they're public, they're building, they have the money, they're growing. And I mean, I remember looking at Dave and being like, this is trading at like a third of book value or something.
Yeah.
Like, I'm pretty sure they were trading for like $50 million, and they had like $150 million in cash.
Yeah.
And I was just like, this is insane. Like it was like the whole like SPAC meme became so negative for a while that things really were clearly undervalued. So I fully anticipate SPACs will be back for certain companies pretty soon. Let's go to Jason Lemkin. He says, no downturn or recession at Samsara at 1.3 billion ARR, Klaviyo at 1 billion, GitLab at 730 million, Palantir at 2.9 billion, Toast at 1.6, Datadog at 2.8, Confluent at 1 billion, just a couple of examples. So there's just all these companies that are ripping and growing ARRs 30%. Fantastic. It's so interesting. This is really a good tour of the fact that like this B2B SaaS,
turns out it's a good business.
Yeah, and that there's not, even though there are power law winners like the Salesforce or I guess Microsoft, really, it was such a huge market that there's multiple $100 billion companies to build there. So really, really cool to see. And yeah, I mean, I think we could see the same thing play out in defense. I think we could see the same thing play out in AI. And I think that, if your fund is set up to, you have to get the $1 trillion company. Yeah, go for that. That's great. That's awesome. But that doesn't mean that you shouldn't be, the seventh biggest, B2B SaaS company has $1 billion in ARR growing 25%. Like I would happily be that company. That's great.
Yeah.
Fantastic. Let's go to Zane. One of the best times in the history of humanity to start a manufacturing company is likely right now. So
so this guy's been sharing the gospel around manufacturing broadly, but also the fact that a lot of our onshore manufacturing is dependent on leaders that are at retirement age, right?
There's that factor. There's also the tariffs thing.
Tariffs are real.
There's also just a new boom in a whole bunch of things that require manufactured parts. Like if we really do go into the humanoid robotics era, that's like a million different motors, a million different batteries and control systems, and like who's going to manufacture the tibia for this thing? It's going to be some aluminum rod.
Yeah, and the downstream effects of a company like Anduril over time having thousands and thousands of employees are that those thousands of employees experience all these small little pain points throughout different product cycles. And then they go out and say like, okay, I made my money in tech, but the next thing I'm doing is setting up this like small manufacturing shop outside of St. Louis, and we're going to make this widget and we're going to sell a lot of them. And that's going to be really good for the country. It's going to be good for them financially. It's going to be good for the companies that depend on these sort of smaller scale manufacturers. So
I was at Anduril HQ last Friday, and I was overhearing some like engineers have a little like little meeting, and they're like, somebody's like, I'm willing to bet on it. Like we need to make it 26 millimeters or something. I have no idea what they were talking about, but like, they're like making these engineering trade-offs widgets, and I mean, they're not going to be able to insource all of that. And then there's also just going to be the dividend of manufacturing and hard tech outside of defense. I mean, I think we talked about the Impulse stove. It's like a hardware company. It's never going to be acquired by Anduril, but we're going to get a new fridge company. We're going to get a new washing machine company.
There was a guy making wheelchairs.
Yeah, wheelchairs. Yeah, exactly. Like we're going to get all these different engineering, hard tech, manufacturing
you can just make things.
It's going to be great. I'm really excited. Let's go to Clint Fiore. He says, no income tax for the rest of your life if you have birthed 4 or more children, copying Hungary in America. And then he follows up, upon further review and discussion with the commenters here, I'm editing this to be for the household income, not just the moms. Rewards homes where one spouse stays home with kids while other spouse works, as well as one's returning to workforce. What do you think? I would take it further, no income tax, period.
Yeah. No, I think it's a good incentive. I know a lot of people where kids are very expensive, right?
Yeah.
For every... We look at everything in Supercars, right? So if I see a guy with 10 Supercars, I'm like, okay, you could probably comfortably have 5 kids, right? So with every, at least from like a carrying cost standpoint. Totally. And so I know a lot of people that have 2 kids right now. And if you said have 2 more and you can not pay income tax again, they're going to run the numbers. They'll make a financial model and they'll see very quickly, we should have those extra kids. 1, kids bring joy. So that's like just value add. But 2, if you can take that incremental income that's not being wasted through wasteful government spending on expensive bushings or $150,000 soap dispensers and invest that capital, it'll benefit them as well as the entire country. So anyways,
it's great. Super pro. Paul Bohm says, can Hollywood stop making slop now? And then Mopar says, no, you're going to watch Fast and the Furious 45 and you're going to love it. What do you think? More or less
this was an election.
Hollywood?
So Paul's had some great ideas lately. This was post-election response, maybe in response to wokeism having peaked. But I don't know. I think like the problems in the movie entertainment industry are just so much bigger than politics.
There's also just this massive lag on productions because you need someone to start writing now, and then that movie will get released in 4 years. So.
The good thing is I hit up a copywriter that I'd worked with in the past. I think we got some of her help on Excel.
Sure.
And I hit her up recently because somebody was looking for some copywriting support, and she's like, I'm staffed on shows indefinitely. I don't have time.
Interesting.
And I was like, that's good.
Wow,
that's good.
That's great.
We need more content.
Yeah. I think the power law stuff will still stay around. The Denis Villeneuve's.
Yeah.
But
I would argue that there's
Nolan's.
small groups that are making cool, impactful films, right?
It's just rare.
Civil War by A24 was a big idea. I think it flopped, but that wasn't slop, right? It was a big effort.
And if you think about like
and
Blade Runner 2049,
Dune is a good counterexample of like I actually don't.
Oppenheimer, like there's usually like 1 or 2 a year. There just aren't one every month, and
Barbie.
Which
Barbie?
Oh,
Oppenheimer.
Barbie. Barbie was.
That was a big moment, right?
Yeah. Gladiator. Is coming out. Good reviews so far. We got to take the boys out. This is a note for all the listeners. get your boys together and go to a movie. It's the best thing. We've done
Wear
it here in LA a few times.
Dress up,
have some drinks before, have some dinner after. It's just a fantastic time. It's a good excuse to get out of the house. A lot of what I realized was that a lot of our friends are married and their wives are more into sports than the husbands, because sports have just become really popular. And so if you say, hey, we're going to go watch the Dodger game, well, like, everyone's going to want to come. But, you know, very few wives want to go see the latest Jason Statham movie. So, you know, it's an excuse to get a boys' night, together. Basically. And it's not as hard of a sell as being like, we're going to go get hammered and smoke cigars all night.
Yeah.
But you can still
and boys' nights are a good way to counter burnout, right? Because
for sure.
Burnout's usually a symptom of something not working in your business. But if you hang out with your boys, they can help give you that clarity, gas you up, give you that extra conviction to keep pushing through it. So one movie night could save your company.
It's great. Let's go to typed female. Sam Altman, we are a few thousand days away from building God. We will build suns on earth, unify physics, and resurrect the worthy dead. Gary
also,
Tan.
We just bought chat.com.
Yeah. Gary Tan, sounds like this will be really impactful for startups. Sam Altman, definitely. No better time to be a startup. I love this because Sam replied and was like, this is funny. Because it does seem like there's a little bit of like a tension there where it's like, okay, if we're going to get this like crazy future, like maybe like how can we predict anything?
OpenAI is developer tooling at its core, right? So if they do build God, like they built an API into
also, it's just like startups are creation. And so if the tools get better and better, like you would want to create, even if there is abundance, you would want to make something creative, and creating a company is like a expression of that.
Yeah, I do feel like it's now that we have intelligence as a service, it is difficult to predict the future.
Yeah.
Right? Especially with software and consumer products. I mean, whatever, 7 years ago, you were like, hey, I think smokeless tobacco, nicotine is going to be big. We should do this. And you turned out to be very correct.
Yeah.
But it's harder to do that with software. I think it's becoming obvious. Like, you probably want network effects. You want some type of lock-in. You don't want to trying to rebuild Salesforce right now could be an amazing business for 5 years, and then you get completely disrupted. Who knows, right?
Yep. Let's go to Keith Raboy. He says, should I post, this is post-election, reflecting on his posting strategy, and he runs a poll. Should I post more about health, fitness, music, venture capital, or politics? And venture capital won handily with 62%.
Thank God.
Thank God. I disagree. I think that posting about politics is actually great for VCs because you want to know what you're getting yourself into at the board dinner. Because it's all going to come out, and the last thing you want is someone who has some crazy political ideology that you don't align with.
But I feel like if Keith met somebody right now that had completely different political views than him and was like truly on the opposite end of the spectrum, he might be like, you know what, you crazy kid, like,
give it a shot.
I'll give you a few million. Give it a shot.
Yeah, I love that. I do appreciate that he's become like my de facto personal trainer, because whenever I post on X about whatever workout I'm doing, he just immediately chimes in with feedback on how I could be doing better. I was like, going for a 1 rep max today, and he was like, you should try 3 rep maxes instead. I was like, clean and jerk is the best movement, and he was like, it's too hard on your tendons. He has a lot of
whatever. I don't know. I don't know though with Keith. Is it his incredible spirit and sort of energy that allows him to do these things, or is it his health protocol? Right? Which one is? Yeah, exactly. Yeah. Right? Because I think a lot of people, if they followed his schedule, would collapse in like the 4th day, right? And so who knows?
Yeah. Well, we know step 1 is lever up.
Yep.
So
always.
Phil says, working with a new client, a 17-year-old founder, $10 million D2C brand, no Zoom calls, no in-person meetings, only meets over Black Ops 6 calls. If it can't be discussed over COD, it's too complicated. The workforce is changing. 2K likes. What do you think?
2K.
This is something that's like amazing and could be the future, or also could be like a harbinger of doom. And this kid could be like,
I do think,
really
yeah, I do
important.
think there's potential to be like, hey, let's move the water cooler talk to COD
Yeah,
or whatever
I like
the
that.
in
There's a lot of
vogue
places
video
within
game
the gaming
is.
room. You can go play
Yeah.
Smash with your colleagues.
Yeah, maybe
know
Call
each
of
other
Duty
more.
is a new ping pong table,
Yeah,
right?
yeah, that
Where
makes sense for the gamers.
I have had some breakthrough conversations. Actually, so this is crazy. So Soylent, when they moved
Yeah.
to downtown LA,
Yeah.
they opened up some desks
space,
for
yeah.
startups. And I was I don't know if
Really?
we ever talked about
No
this,
way.
but you had left the company, but I had a desk there and they had fantastic ping pong tables that
Amazing.
I would use at least once a day.
Crush
right.
it.
So
That's great.
at first I was kind of thinking that COD thing was silly, but how different is it to play ping pong versus
Well,
COD?
You know, one of my favorite pitches with a VC that I ever did was with Blake Robbins when he was at Benchmark.
Yeah.
And we played PUBG together, which
No
is
way.
a battle royale game. And it was fascinating because it felt like the modern version of going golfing.
Yeah.
So we talk about business, talk about the business, talk about building companies, but then we're also on the same team in this like fight for survival. So
Yeah.
battle royale, there's I think we were playing duos, 150 people on the map, so there's 75 teams.
Yep.
And if you get shot, you go down, but you can be revived.
Yeah.
And so there's always a question of, are you going to be greedy or thirsty?
Yeah.
Another good gamer word to adopt. Being thirsty is when you get too hungry for the kill and you prioritize offense over defense.
Yeah.
And so I noticed, and what I really liked about him was that when I got downed, he would prioritize reviving me over like getting the extra kill,
That's
the
a
glory.
VC. That's a VC you
And I
want.
noticed myself thirsting all the time and being like, "Fuck, we lost because I'm an idiot and I didn't play it right." But
Well, that's why golf is actually a genuinely really great way to get to know somebody,
Yep.
especially in a business context. Because if you
how do they handle
play
failure?
18 holes and you see like, oh, like every fourth hole he like
Threw his
undercounts
club.
his
or
like
cheating,
undercounts,
or throwing his club, raging,
yeah, or getting
out,
pissed, yeah,
or doing anything,
or if they're too chill about
Yeah,
it, like
getting drunk
they're not,
on the golf course,
or in the
hollering
back
at
nine,
the caddy girl or whatever.
yeah, back nine.
Yeah, there's a
they
lot of ways
start,
to
like,
expose the truth about someone through that.
Yeah.
And it's much better than just a coffee meeting, which is just vanilla.
yeah, and you get to walk the whole time.
Yeah,
which
I
is-
love it. So yeah, maybe COD is the future. Let's skip that. Man, Jarvis says, man, Trump really lucked out having an autistic billionaire randomly choose his election as his next object of fixation. Ha ha ha.
And Elon responds.
50K likes and Elon responds with a crying emoji and Jarvis just says, "Love you, King." So good.
Amazing.
So
amazing.
funny that that Elon just got obsessed with the
I
show.
can't believe this app is only $10 a month.
It's incredible. These interactions. This has always been the case. I remember like when I first got to Silicon Valley, getting online and just tweeting with like Sean Parker and Jim Breyer from Excel.
Mm-hmm.
They were on stage and like they were posting about their investing initiatives. And I was able to just be like a reply guy and like chat with them.
Yeah.
It was like crazy. Like
Huge alpha and being a reply guy.
Basically, yeah.
Yeah.
And it was super inspiring at the time. I was like, okay, like at least these guys give me the time of day. Like
Yeah.
they're not like big dogging me,
Yeah.
which is awesome.
Yeah, so here's the thing. It certainly was not random, right?
Yeah.
Elon was absolutely snubbed by Biden.
Totally.
Who completely disrespected the biggest American manufacturer of EVs by not inviting Elon to meet with him and the government on the issue. Same thing in California. California like basically made fun of him and told him to leave.
Yep.
And
Message received.
Yeah, message received. Everything we just saw over the past however many months was just a reaction to being disrespected
Yep.
as a person,
Yep.
as a businessman, and it was almost with his level of ambition, it was something that he needed to do to reach his full potential, because
Yep.
he's at a scale where what the government thinks about him and his businesses
Yep.
is probably more important than anything else.
Yep, that makes sense. Let's go to Jan Pellig. He says, heard a leak from one of the frontier labs, not OpenAI, to be honest. They reached an unexpected huge wall of diminishing returns, trying to brute force better results by training longer and using more and more data, more severe than what is published previously. So the question is like, are we hitting a wall, or are scaling laws going to hold?
Here's what I would say. 90% of frontier AI labs quit right before they're about to make it big. Same thing in gambling, right?
Yeah.
90% of sports bettors quit right before they're about to hit that crazy parlay that and so my advice to this frontier lab is double down, more data,
lever up,
more energy. Get whale blubber as an energy source if you need it. Nuclear, coal,
wind,
do it all.
Tidal, solar, everything.
Tidal.
Fusion.
So here's
Sam is
here's what AI labs have not partnered with SoulCycle yet to try to capture that energy.
I mean, we've seen the Matrix. Like, put the people in the pod, use their energy source, they become batteries. The interesting thing here is it's really hard to evaluate this because OpenAI is the most well-funded, and so they're the ones, other than the hyperscalers, they're the ones that can actually go and build like the gigawatt data center, which is like a new thing that needs to be built. It like physically needs to exist before you can do that training run. XAI is pretty far along. They're building like the largest cluster. So it's like you can't, I feel like it's really, really hard to evaluate is scaling holding without actually running the experiment of like, we built the thing and this was the result. And the fear is that you 10x the power, you 10x the training and the GPUs, but then IQ of these models goes from like 105 to 107. And it's like, that might be economically viable, honestly. It might be better at whatever it does, and it might be really, really valuable to do that, but it might just be like, okay, we're hitting really diminishing marginal returns, and we're not going to get this super intelligence where it's like, oh yeah, just a couple orders of magnitude, and then we'll be at 200 IQ. And that's something that like I've never really seen anyone make a really great argument for like, clearly scaling is all you need, and scale is really valuable, and scale improves the model, but what is the ratio between orders of magnitude in energy and data center size and actual real world applicability in IQ? Like, what will it take? How many orders of magnitude to get to 150? No one really knows, I think, but we'll see. Let's go to Edmund. He says, does anyone ever think about how aesthetic it is that humans drink water to survive? Like this clear, 0-calorie, smooth liquid, pure, minimal, sleek. It's water. It's giving Lumiere. It's giving modernity. It's good design.
Water's Lindy.
Water is.
We have a lot of other
water.
alternatives.
Cheers.
Cheers. Thank you to Aurora. We have a lot of other alternatives, but we humans, we keep coming back to water.
Yeah.
There
if
is.
Only they could put caffeine in it.
There's that company, Orca, right?
Oh yeah,
we got to get some of that.
Yeah, we got to try that. Demo that on the pod. It's great. Let's go to Cody Sanchez. She says, I don't want passive income. I want a fucking empire.
Let's go, Cody.
Let's go.
Cody.
One of us.
One of us.
One of us. One of us.
Passive income isn't real.
Yeah, fake.
If you're buying a job. If you're getting income, there's some level of management that comes with it. And even if you hire somebody to manage said income, like a CEO or an asset manager, things like that, you still have to manage that person.
And even if you have $100 million and you put it in government bonds and you're getting $3 million a year, it's like you will forever wonder, like, could I be getting 10%?
Yeah, active income, nothing hits like active income.
Active income,
working,
put it on
and
the
getting
sheet.
paid. Active
we
income.
are pro active income.
Active
here.
income. No, nothing hits like working hard and then making a lot of money from it. It's like the greatest drug on earth.
So this is a great question. Adam Draper writes, where's the punk rock of the startup world right now? 12 years ago, it was Bitcoin. And Matt.crypto says, it's just funny, he doesn't say crypto, he says longevity, which I somewhat buy. I would say that it's been the Gundo.
Nuclear.
The Gundo really was like very punk rock and very countercultural and very independent and very not an industry plant.
It's crazy that the internet made it go mainstream
very quickly.
Very quickly.
It was 1 year of punk rock, and now it's like
they were getting a hit piece in like 4 months.
Yeah. No, not a hit piece, just like puff pieces.
I know.
Like puff piece after puff piece. And now it's like everyone knows it, and it's like, okay, the game's over.
No, but they were, at one point when there was some coverage happening, they were worried like it was going to be like pretty negative.
I do think longevity in bio could be next. I was talking to Sebastian Malabai, the author of Power Law, and he was saying that the next big book he wants to write is about bio investors.
Yeah.
Because it's a very, very different model, very different world. But maybe it could change with AI. Maybe it can change with more financialization. But it is a very untapped world that
totally
is kind of early, but clearly very promising. Let's go to Rajveer. He says, on election day, Kalshi outspent the Trump and Harris campaigns on meta ads.
Yeah, so this was one.
So crazy.
I totally respect Kalshi capturing the moment, because their whole thing is it's much more about politics than Polymarket. Polymarket is markets for everything. Kalshi is much more focused on being the legal quote unquote legal way to bet on the election. So they should have spent millions and millions, and they did. The funny thing though is they kept congratulating themselves on hitting number 1 and all this stuff. And it reminded me of that meme where it's the guy spraying champagne in his own mouth and he's third on the podium or whatever.
Yeah. I think Rune tweeted that.
So good. I think we'll see what happens. Every company needs to continue to kind of reinvent themselves. I'm sure Kalshi will come back and kind of try to create new markets and momentum. And maybe there's an argument that the way to do it is to build a ton of momentum around specific markets,
events,
whereas Polymarket's more platform style approach.
Yeah. This is a great one. Bill Gurley says, stop using revenue multiples and you will have more clarity on valuations. And it's a reply to Jason Lemkin. For the math to pencil out in venture capital, we probably need a rebound in public multiples. VC probably can't make money at 5x ARR public comps with Harry Stebbings. It's so funny because Bill Gurley's just coming in like the boss.
Yeah, he's basically has the wisdom of Yoda now. He's the only VC from that era that's still extremely online, right?
Yeah, that's true.
And he's able to just pop in and be like, use the EBITDA multiple, my friend.
Oh, you think that's what he's saying?
That was the way I read it. As
I thought it would just be like a more nuanced analysis of
right.
team, market structure, power law, like monopoly characteristics.
But over focus on any one metric is going to lead you astray.
Yeah,
right?
I mean, revenue multiple is really silly when you think about like all the other levers in a model. It's kind of crazy to lean on that. But let's go to this quote tweet of Chamath. Inglorious Capital says, thanks Washington Post, but I only trust Autism Capital with my news. Is a serious tweet a billionaire just wrote. And
so the crazy thing is how much impact this has.
This
Wasn't that one account you said?
Yeah, Cremieux. So he went from 70K followers to 200K followers off of this one tweet by Chamath. It was a very well-written tweet. I canceled my New York Times and Washington Post subscriptions and just reallocated the money to subscribe and follow the following folks on X who I believe help get me accurate news. And it was Autism Capital and then Cremieux and then a bunch of other people. But what a
rise of the poster.
Yeah, and it's true. It's true. Like you'll just get better.
That's why we cover the timeline instead of we don't cover the news.
Yeah, we don't. Let's go to Joe Lonsdale. Roaring 20s redux begins shortly. Jeff Lonsdale says, okay, but the PE ratio of the S&P 500 was around 9 to 11 in 1924 to 1925. Boo. Boo. I'm on Joe's team here.
Yeah.
Run it back.
Run it back.
Are they both Lonsdales? Are they literally brothers or something?
They must be related.
Okay.
If they're not, they should partner up in some way.
But yeah, Joe, I'm very bullish on the 20s. I think it's great. I think we're getting there.
Yeah,
beginning shorty.
I think the
20s.
Optimism that there's
the
obviously
spirits.
a massive amount of the animal spirits are back. There's a ton of optimism in the last week in the tech world. And that's great. But it actually began, I swear it began like early in the 2020s, right? Like there was obviously a lot of froth and bullshit around COVID and markets and stuff like that. But there was also the beginning of this whole movement of like, we're going to make the world a better place, not just with software and apps, but with real world products.
Yeah, that's when a lot of that stuff started. It's interesting. Yeah. There's also, I mean, it's interesting because like during the post-ZERP crash and the recession, like the fundamental economic drivers of the American economy were very strong. But if you asked people about consumer sentiment, they would all say it's not working for me. It's not doing well. And so this was termed by Kyla Scanlon like the vibe session.
Yeah.
And there was this idea that like the vibes feel off, even though we're not seeing like the American consumer collapse, and the American economy kept growing, and we had a very brief recession. We never went into a depression. All the doomer stuff didn't come to bear.
Well,
so there's something about the fact that like we have a very solid foundation to build on right now. Yeah. It's great. Okay, let's pass that. Let's do UC Berkeley's law school apparently had a course called Elon Fought the Law Won on offer. Alas, it has since been canceled. That's so crazy
good.
that someone was going to teach a whole course on this, and they're just like, it doesn't make sense anymore because he actually won.
Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah, I wish we could see what date it was actually sent. It would be amazing if it was canceled last week.
I think it was. This looks recent. This looks like a recent screenshot.
Spring 2025. Yeah, so right around the corner.
They're planning it for spring and just canceled it. Crazy.
Yeah, I think the lesson here is he didn't try to fight the law directly. He fought it indirectly. Yeah. Right.
Also, a lot of things he won, like in the micro, like that Tesla shareholder lawsuit where the judge tried to take away his comp package, which all the shareholders had approved, where if he got the stock price to like an insane number, he would get a ton of shares. He did it. Everyone was happy. But then like one shareholder fought and like the judge ruled with them. But then he went back to the shareholders and got it done. Yeah. And so I don't know what they were thinking with this because there aren't many examples.
Shout out to
Elon
the shareholders.
Law, Air, L's. It's very, very rare. Yeah, shout out to the shareholders. Seriously. Let's go to Trent Griffin. I think he's like a public markets analyst. He writes, Alad Gill, I see 5 layers of AI value. 1, NVIDIA and chips. 2, data centers. 3, models. 4, tools for deploying AI. And 5, workflow services. And I think he misses 6, which is energy. Energy is like clearly the next thing. And it's been a little bit of a champagne or a cocktail position in the sense that people talk about it at cocktail parties. Oh, energy is going to be really important. Sam Altman's investing in it, but the market hasn't really moved on it. But they're starting to now. It's just starting.
7 posters, right? Without people like Rune and other top AI posters, almost none of this works, right? Posters posters are moving the market.
I mean, in terms of AI value, there are legitimately dozens of people that are going to build $1 million businesses off of AI related content. Yeah. Whether it's YouTube videos or how-tos
tutorials,
or courses or podcasts, like there are a number of AI podcasts that have gotten really big. Alad Gill has a great AI podcast. Yeah. I mean, he's monetizing it differently through a fund, but like nevertheless, like he is part of the AI value chain, even as a capital allocator. Like, it is interesting. But of course, you got to boil it down to
AI
5.
media,
like, you don't want to go too crazy. But that's a fascinating tweet. Let's go to Scottie Pippen. I didn't even realize he was still using X. That's amazing.
Scottie.
So Scottie Pippen writes, just woke up from a wild dream. Satoshi Nakamoto visited me and he laughed at the price of Bitcoin. Too low, he said. I'm taking it higher. You haven't seen anything yet. Get ready. 2025 is going to be crazy.
I love this trend of athletes like retiring and then coming back to post because you can have a whole
he still has his jersey in the picture.
Yeah, it's amazing. Iconic. You can have this whole cultural resurgence, right? Because when people see Scottie Pippen in the feed, they're going to pay attention, right?
It's great.
AB has done this, I think, really well throughout the last year as well. So bullish on Scottie and Bitcoin.
Very bullish. Let's go to Nikita Beer. I can't help but feel like we're about to enter one of the most insane times to own risk assets. And Amit replies, is a Lambo a risk asset? And I hate to break it to you, bro. It's not. It's a
very stable, hard asset.
You want to get into the equity.
As long as you don't put any too much mileage on it.
Yeah, but most Lambos are depreciating. Very few. Maybe get a Countach if you're looking for something, but even that's not a risk asset.
I think Packy was saying something earlier as well. Is he's like, I feel very underallocated to tech and crypto, even though his aside from his media business is like probably 95% tech and crypto.
Yeah.
The FOMO is starting.
Yep.
Great time to own risk assets.
Yeah.
Nikita also knows he can risk it all.
Yep.
And worst case, he'll just build another app and flip it.
Did you see his other tweet about millionaires in the post-ZERP era are pointless? Being a centimillionaire is what, and we're going to call them centis, which is very funny because like I mean, we know
Centaurs.
We know a lot of centimillionaires, and that's not the word they use. Like, we all know the word that they use. It's not centis. So he's kind of telling on himself that he doesn't know like the real word.
Exactly.
But hopefully he gets there. Hopefully he learns the real word. He's kind of acting like one of those guys that moves to San Francisco and San Fran. You know, you don't really sound like a real centimillionaire, but someone will clue you in. I would caution you, if you're in Lake Como, don't drop centi, because George Clooney's going to spit out his screaming eagle if he hears you.
No, I would. I think Nikita should get on to really capture the long tail of his fans that can't afford intro.
Yep.
Create a copy trading subscription.
Oh, there you go.
Charge $10,000 a month.
There you go.
And some carry on it too, because I think he would have probably 10,000 people that would be like, yeah, I'm gonna YOLO with Nikita.
Hell yeah,
I'm riding.
I'm riding into the risk assets. And this is the one we got to close on. Jay Alto says, some creators do it for the clout, some creators do it for the money, but this is why the real ones do it. And it's a clip of the founder of Patreon giving some long speech about
we don't need it.
Who cares?
We
do it for the money. We just want to be ultra clear about this. If you're listening, you're going to hear a lot of ads and you're going to hear a lot of monetization. So get ready. Buckle up.
Ready.
Lock in. Lever up. Welcome to Technology Brothers. Thanks for listening.